Okay, good morning, everyone. Seeing that we have a quorum, I'll call to order the Planning Board regular meeting of September 19th, 2024. Let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. As we do beginning on every meeting, does any member of the planning board have a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest with regard to any item on the agenda? If so, please state so at this time. Richard?
I do not.
I do not.
I do not.
I do not.
Okay. The next item is our agenda for today. Any comments or questions on the agenda before we move to approve or amend? Anyone? Okay.
I want to get an update on the, I think in the last meeting we suggested that a letter be sent out to
You're talking about the ETJ?
the ETJ.
Okay, we can,
Can we get an update on that?
that can be covered in item 7, administrative type issues.
Fantastic.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Agenda's approved. Public comments, we actually have 2 public comment periods. The first one concerns any comment on the agenda items listed on today's agenda. Do we have any public comments on that? Seeing nothing. Seeing none, we'll move on to the no public comments. Our first item of business is consideration of the June 20th regular meeting minutes. Okay. Jerry, you have a comment on that?
Yes, though, I'm always in favor of making motions to adjourn the meeting, but since I was absent that meeting, you have to remove my name from the yeas. Okay. I think it was the test to make sure I read all these.
Yes, there should be, Gerald should be moved down to the absent line
Yes.
on that one. Whoever did the boxes got tired at the end. Okay, so Jerry was not here. Other than that, Dysinger, Jones, and LeBruno did obviously vote to adjourn, so that can be corrected for the record. Gentlemen, any other issues with this minutes? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve with the one typographical correction to the final box on page 3?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Ayes have it. That's approved. Next, we have to look at the minutes for the July 18th regular meeting. Likewise, anybody have any changes or comments on that set of minutes? Good. Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
I so move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The minutes are approved. Okay, an old business actually from that July meeting. A report from Ron 2 on the traffic impact study. The way we left it at the last meeting was, well, I'll let Ron just do it, but the way we left it at the last meeting was either sample text to look at and guidance from the council. So why don't you report, Ron, the activity since that meeting?
Yes, and Lisa's going to jump in if I misstate something here, but Lisa had presented information to the town council at their August meeting, I believe it was, and got direction from council. They would rather us spend time doing some other things and not move forward with that particular amendment at this time. Is that how I understand it? So we don't have any sample language or anything to consider as a result.
Okay, so council being fully aware of what we were doing, they've chosen to advise us to discontinue the work on that, correct?
Yes,
I wanna
sir.
make sure.
Yes, sir.
So as far as the planning board goes, we have no further steps to do on that. But I want to make sure everybody's aware of that. And I guess my only comment on that, which is fine, serve at the pleasure of the council, is that the council has chosen this, and I guess maybe just an echo from them, if they choose to have us take this up again because of the complexity of that issue, I would expect 3 to 4 months before anything would come to them.
Sure.
So it's not like it's not like a kind of the faucet where we can, because obviously we seen from our meeting last, it's a somewhat complicated issue. So if they don't wish us to do it now, it's just don't expect like turn it on and we'll have it in a month. Then it's going to probably be 4 months out before anything pops back. And then if they decide they want us to look at it again, as long as they're aware of that, that's what we'll do.
Yeah, I would just like to make the comment that, I think it's really inappropriate that we kick this down the curb. I mean, this is a pretty fundamental question. Clearly, the county commissioners chose to table it and are not going to take a position on how, in an area where we're developing at such a rapid pace that traffic impact studies aren't moved forward in a way that gives citizens the ability to have some input prior rather than after a preliminary plat. So I think it's unfortunate, and I think citizens ought to be aware that, in my mind, this is a failure of the council to take up something and allow us to take up something that's pretty important.
And we will be watching the county's actions. They sent this actually over to committee. We'll be following the committee. And when it reports back to the board, I will report that to the town council as well.
What committee is this?
Brunswick County
Brunswick.
County commissioners forwarded their traffic impact ordinances to a committee.
Which is essentially, they tabled it. That's going nowhere. I mean, we're not going to see anything out of the county. I think
Well, we are unaware of that
I'll bet a
position.
quarter's
We are
pay
aware that they have
we're not
submitted
going to
this
see
to a
anything out of the
committee.
county before November.
So, well, that's the way it is. That's what the council has chosen to direct us
Yep.
to do, is to discontinue that. And as long as the public is aware, then we do what we can.
Thanks, Ron.
Okay, on the new business side, we had Angels Trace first,
Yes.
but considering that it looks like the applicant.
Yeah,
can we hold that?
I've been in contact with the applicant. They have got caught with the detours
Yeah.
through the 17 and said it'll be closer to 9:30 before they get
All
here.
right, so can we
Yeah, we'll-
allow us to move on to 2 or 3 and come back to that?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, so new business 2 is, I guess I would maybe, this our possible or future consideration UDO text amendment discussion. So Ron has put together a list. So Ron, 2, why don't you tell us what you're thinking there, and I guess then we can decide. Are you looking then from direction for us on what to focus on next as we move along here through the year?
Yeah, Ron, what I thought here we would do is identify, or I think there's 5 or 6 items on this list, and I believe you may have a couple more that you wanted to talk about, if time permitting, Ron. So thought we would just bring these to your attention as a planning board. I will go over in what I can in detail. And just need a couple.
Okay. Why don't we just go down your list first,
And-
and then we'll get comments for everybody. First one, I guess, is somewhat council directed to the standalone parking lots.
Yeah, but the first one on this list is the table of use changes.
Okay. So
There are
that's,
several.
I was just following this.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So that's your
Yeah.
last bullet point, table 3.1 cleanup.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So there's 5 or 6 pages. As item number, what I've labeled an item number 1 in the handout I just passed out, and highlighted the changes here. So this is an inspection by staff, and also one of the council members has identified some inconsistencies. Basically, there's some there's some errors in code reference. So it's not changing context, but you'll see the first highlight there under beside home occupations under use standard. It says 3.6 F and G.
Right.
G
You
is
crossed
the-
out the F.
Yeah,
and go into
G is the appropriate code language.
Right.
Page 3, yeah, several there: marina, maritime rental, micro distillery, parking lot. With
Well, that parking lot one is not changing anything but what the use standard is, right?
right in this table, just changing the
The
use
use
standard.
standard
Yes,
only,
sir.
not how we define it or use it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And actually, I've skipped one on page 2. I'm sorry, model home and unit. Question there aren't any standards for model home uses. Those standards are missing. So if you go to find 3.7.f for model homes, it does not exist. So the question is, do we want to create model home standards, or are we okay with it just being a permitted use in those residential districts? Don't have to answer that today, but just kind of a thought process. So we don't have to have standards. They would just, subdivisions built, they have a model home.
We have it as a
Kind of.
definition, though, don't we?
Did not see a definition, but I could have missed it.
Stick it in the chart.
Yeah, I thought we had it as a definition because it was like you can only have a model home up until 80%
I'll check here real
completed or
quickly.
something. All right. Look. And so in general, that's all that's in that.
Yeah, most cases, these are Scrivener errors.
So I guess how do we do this? I mean, obviously the typographical errors, can staff just correct it and republish, or do we need to do a formal text amendment?
That's what we want to pursue, but we can also have you today just recommend these changes, these Scrivener errors, if you will, to the town council. We'll move forward and handle those appropriately.
Well, certainly in my mind, the changes to the use standard, giving it the right reference, whatever subparagraph it was, is fine. I mean, I don't have objections to that. You should be referred from the table to the right paragraph.
Right. Yeah.
The one on a model home, I guess, I thought we had done that somewhere. I just recall language being that you can have a model home up until 80% of the units are done.
I've just did a search in your definitions
Out there.
section, and I don't see a definition for model home.
So I don't know if that one we just leave as is and handle that as a separate text amendment.
It may be in the subdivision regulation section.
No, I'm check there too.
Right.
My recollection was the 80% rule pertained to a sales office,
Oh, maybe a sales office, not
Yeah.
a model home.
not a model home.
What is 3.7F? Is that just completely wrong?
What
I
up?
thought the model home was acceptable.
Yeah, I didn't see anything there. Ron, I believe it's missed. There is no 3.7F. Is my recollection, but I'm hearing. Give me a few more seconds.
So where is West?
There
Yeah,
is no F.
3.7F is compute. No.
There is no 3.7F. 3.7E is family care home. And then there is no F.
Yeah.
3.7. C.
So to fix this,
We need to write-
do we simply need to create? My understanding, we do not have a definition of a model home, correct?
Correct.
So we need to
Create one.
create one, for one, and then create a amendment that essentially, if the 80% rule only refers to sales office, would now refer to sales office plus the model home. Is that the solution?
I see as a couple solutions. One is, as you described, define the model home, and then create criteria, the F, 3.7F, if you will, to define what those special conditions may be for it to be permitted. The other solution, in my opinion, is we could just allow it in the residential districts, the model home in the residential districts.
Yeah, because we got to,
Change the PS to a P.
right?
Yeah.
It's typically.
Well, I guess
Go
my
ahead.
point, I think what we should do is all the other just letter cleanup should be done.
Yes.
If we did
yes.
have to say do it, we'll take a vote, a move on that. That issue maybe just has to be because it's
I see it's
not as straightforward handled.
two separate issues.
Yes.
One is the Scrivener errors for the other uses, and then this one, if you want us to, we can come at your next meeting, which is November. I guess, see if there's any definitions we could provide, as well as potential standards, or just make it as
So-
a permitted by right. You'll have both of those options to discuss.
So I guess I'll make a motion. I motion that the board
Hmm.
authorize staff to take to council all the typographical error corrections that direct use standards to the proper paragraph in the existing UDO as written. And separate from that, at our next regular meeting, they come up with proper definitions or text concerning model homes in whatever appropriate distance. Does anyone want to second that
I think
motion?
that's, I'm happy with that. I'll second it.
All of, Stuart?
Good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any against?
Nope.
So the ayes have it, so staff is corrected. As long as you heard that, unless you need me to
Yeah, and we'll go
repeat
back and
Sorry.
I was looking for some, and at Lisa's suggestion, looking to see what the temporary real estate office requirements say, and that's where the 80% rule comes
Okay.
in. So it may just be a reference to that versus creating standards itself. So there may be a third
Or
option
maybe
as well.
striking all together, and we don't care about it.
Right,
Or just say model, home,
I mean-
whatever.
right.
We'll, November, so all the corrections can be done, and then that issue we'll take up at our next meeting and try to put that corrected and finalized to bed.
Because the temporary real estate office says that in the instance, temporary means a period not to exceed 5 years, or when 80% of the units in the development have received a CO. So it may be just as easy to point to that subsection
Just change it to,
instead of coming up with.
well,
I'm
Under
a little
definition.
concerned about the word temporary. Now, if a real estate office says, no, that's permanent.
that's different.
Okay.
That's a different use.
So,
That's different.
for
yeah.
instance, the sales office that the Sea Trail developer has built within Sea Trail would be a permanent or a temporary?
That's permanent, because they already had that approved long ago,
Okay.
before it turned into an empty warehouse and then turned back into the sales office. But I think what we're talking about here is probably a model home that's used just as a model home, or a model home that also doubles as the
As a
sales
sales
office during the sales of the unit. So,
Well, can we make sure that we make that distinction in the language?
yeah. Okay.
A lot of sales offices are, well, mobile homes stuck on a lot.
Well, that's why I think we're trying to differentiate that. That should be covered by the standalone sales office. That if you're using a model home, I think we just need to clear that language up.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be an earth-shattering development to the town. On a model home sitting there, not sitting there, I'm sure all developers at the end want to sell it. Right, so,
But at the end of the day, you drive by the model home, it looks like a home.
right.
It's not
So,
being used for commercial
We just want to
purposes.
tie up our language properly and make sure that it's properly converted to a usable residential unit and then sold off before the developer skedaddles,
Either that or it's removed.
which never done.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
if they're using a
If it's
Trailer.
a trailer, then
as
that's
a temporary, then we need to make sure that they understand there's an obligation to mediate.
Do we have to handle this certificate separately? That
No,
files the same way.
I'll just touch on those, and I think your motion's still going to me, they're Scrivener errors as well. The certificate of UDO administrator approval, I've proposed striking that requirement from the exempt plat division. The reason being, certificate L, in my opinion, and I did consult with Wes, covers that. And then the other one, I believe, the certificate of UDO administrator, if you look at the certificates provided in your code, is actually E, and the table references D. And then the certificate of planning board approval currently references D. So I'm sorry, currently references E, and it should be D. So it's just switching those. So Ron, if you don't mind, your previous Scrivener's error motion, if you will, we'll just move forward with those.
Correct. Some notes here. Okay, what's the next topic you want to?
Next item would be standalone parking lots. One of the council members has asked that we consider the standards we have for standalone parking lots. As he wasn't certain that when the planning board adopted the UDO that this item was intended to be an existing use, an allowed use in the zoning district. So this would allow a business to have a standalone parking lot for commercial purposes without having a building. They are permitted in the BB1 zoning district currently as the code is laid out, the MB1 and the MB2 zoning districts, and the recreational industrial district, and then the MUD districts. Provided with the PS on the table, provided that they meet the landscaping standards, the buffer standards, and your parking lot design standards per the code. There's a reference to that 3.8. You do have a definition of parking lots, and I did compare the definition of parking lots with the current code and the previous code, but the current code includes this last statement there: parking lot used as a principal use shall be subject to the use standards provided in section 3.8. So my interpretation, comparing the older code, the previous code with this code, was there was some, well, I can't say there was discussion, but at least someone made a decision to add that statement in the definition, if you will, to differentiate the
So
standalone
I
parking
guess the
lots versus
question
ancillary.
is a standalone parking lot. And I don't know how that's possible in the MUD district, because by definition, the M is mixed, so it can't be a standalone. But anyway, other than that maybe being removed, I really don't have a problem with standalone parking lots in business districts. I'm not sure what the uproar is on that.
Well,
No.
my guess is the uproar is depending upon, what do we do with tree abatement issues in it?
So it's the same. They'd be subject to the same tree mitigation.
Correct?
Yes.
If they try to knock down a 36-inch live oak, they got to mitigate it on the property. So I don't, in the commercial districts, the business districts, whether in my mind in any of them, it should be allowed. If the private sector owns a property of land and they would like to make it into a parking lot for commercial purposes, I don't see any reason for us to get in the way. There was a kind of an inference in some statements that, well, we want the town to be able to do it. And so in my mind, if the town can do it, I don't see why the private sector can't do it if they choose.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Now, it did say it's allowed in the MUD, which I guess makes no sense to me, because if it's mixed use, how could it possibly just be a standalone parking lot? Because then there's no mixed part. So maybe we need to cross that out or take it out of that, because it's just, to me, nonsensical. Unless you explain to me how that possible something can be, I guess can it be zoned a mixed use and then have no mix?
I'll need to look at that a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
I'm still learning your code, so
Right. I mean, if something is zoned mixed use, a parcel, I'd have to look at the map, I guess. If a parcel is zoned mixed use and then they only come up with a single use. So maybe some correction, either take that out. The simple thing is probably take MUD off that list of it where it can do it. And as far as I'm concerned, any other B district, business district, it's up to the private owner what they want to do with it. Do they want to build a store or do they want to build a parking lot? Should be, as long as it's an acceptable use, it's fine with me. I don't know. I guess I don't understand the need to change it, other than I had a kind of maybe Lisa, you could give me more background on that. The M just struck me as odd.
Mhm.
And
The
maybe
only thing that I could see, because the MUD district is only the Carolina Dreams around Food Lion and Planetarium and all that, is if the Planetarium wanted to take the vacant lot that's beside it
Mhm.
and convert that into a parking lot, that would be a standalone parking lot.
because that's a single parcel.
It's a
And that
parcel.
A
is
parcel in the
used,
MUD.
and that is used as the standalone parking lot now,
Right.
in a lot of instances.
So I guess
Sunset at Sunset will be
based on
using
that kind of description,
lot.
I'm still not objectionable to
Right.
it. So in my mind, I don't know if we have to take this up at all.
I don't think so.
Right.
With it being
So the parcel next to, now who owns that parcel right now?
Carolina Dreams owns all of it. Anything that's vacant, they own it.
Right.
Well, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that being converted into a single-use parking. Wait, is what we're saying right now that could be converted into a single, or is being, I don't recollect that ever being used as a single-use park.
It is now, sort of.
It is now.
Maybe I'm thinking
There
of
are
a different
employees
parcel.
that use
You gotta
that
know what-
parking lot to park there, and events use that parking lot to
Yeah.
park.
It's kind of an unofficial parking lot. So, but again, I guess more philosophically, or
Well, now that we've moved the event to the gazebo,
well,
what events are using that parking lot?
Sunset at Sunset will be using that
Using-
Oh,
parking
Sunset
lot.
at Sunset.
Yeah. And again, I guess my
And then other events like Run Sunset Beach
Yeah.
utilizes that parking area.
and
Yeah.
again, I guess the mix only because the M got. So I guess I got to change my thinking. It's a parcel that exists in the mud zoning.
right.
So if you have an individual, if somebody owns a parcel that's designated either those Bs or in this case a mud, I see no reason for us to step in and say you cannot make that into a parking lot. That makes no sense to me. If
Well, I
It-
think some of the people that own residential properties in that area are not going to be too happy if that area gets
it's
paved and
already-
turned into a single-use parking lot.
but and that's they're not. They're in next to
I
them
mean,
is
are we?
mud.
I mean, essentially, as
Yeah.
it stands right now, in terms of development by right,
So
that
if
person
that
could
case,
convert that into a parking lot.
yes, no, P.S. under the rules, which means it have to be buffered and landscaped.
Right.
So it's still, to me, it's a land rights issue. They own the land.
Right.
I don't see stepping in and stopping them from not likely to do that. So
Now the MB1 and 2 districts are along this corridor
hmm
and may have you may want to look at making those not able to be standalone parking lots in the MB1 and 2 districts.
Okay.
That's completely different from the MUD district.
but again,
Well, I mean,
why would we?
in the best of all possible worlds, I'd like to see the council extend the mud district.
I mean, if somebody decides they just want to put up a parking lot and charge, I guess if they wanted to charge, they're free to do that. In my mind, I don't see us getting in the way of that. So, we can. And certainly, I don't put it high on my priority list to do this. I think other things are more important. So, I mean, I stand under the land.
So essentially, we would be leaving. We're not going to touch.
We're not
this.
going to touch it
Okay.
unless someone can provide me with at this time a more compelling need. And Stuart,
Well,
you lived in a more denser area, maybe.
so, Ron, was there specific parking lot requirements that were part of the councilman's message also?
His message was more about he didn't believe it was intent of the planning board when that use became permissible in the table. He didn't believe that was the intention of the planning board at that time, to allow that standalone use. And what I don't know is the concern with competition, maybe, in town providing some on-street, some parking opportunities.
Well,
I mean,
I think where this is coming from is the parking committee.
Could be.
Because they're trying to create potential for a parking lot on the island.
so that if the intent is not have any competition, then I'm even more against making the change.
Now, on the
But-
island, they're only allowed in the BB1
BB1,
district,
yeah.
which is between 1st and 27th. They're not allowed anywhere else on the island.
But we
As long as
also-
that doesn't change
Right.
that.
Right.
No, we're not allowing it any more
Yeah.
places.
No.
No.
So,
But we also have to change the standards for the paving if we're going to do that parking committee idea.
There's a stipulation in the parking section now that we can do a vegetative lot.
Okay.
That doesn't have to be asphalt.
Okay. That was the big issue.
And that my only concern with the MB2 would be, and it's expensive real estate for somebody to create a business of a shuttle service to go to the island or to the convention center or to wherever else within town, and take up a lot of that valuable real estate that we would like it to be developed into restaurants and shops and retail and doctor's office and everything else instead of parking lots. But like I said, it's very valuable real estate for somebody to buy that land just to make a parking lot so they can run a bus service from it.
Well, there's a lot of pent up sentiment about creating a shuttle service. You know, you've probably seen more of this being on the parking commission. I mean, we got huge issues in terms of parking
Well,
on the barrier island.
again, my thought,
Frankly,
if the private sector is able to solve it, maybe we should let them.
Yeah.
well, but now we're, and I understand and share in Lisa's sentiment that, we got commercial areas that are not developed at the best of all possible worlds. Logan unfortunately chose not to adhere to our request to take that corner below the Methodist Church and take it from being a storage locker and turn it into other commercial applications. So that parcel is now moot. And, the remaining, we have conditionally rezoned areas within Sea Trail for commercial development. So certainly those are going to come online. But, it seems to me at some point we're going to have to deal with the potential for a shuttle service and a standalone parking lot, whether it's
But
sponsored by the town or sponsored by the private sector.
at the private sector, I mean, if someone buys an expensive and opens up a shop, puts a building on it in a large lot, then it's no longer standalone, and they're well within the code to use that lot off.
Absolutely.
So I think,
And
in my
more
mind,
power
this
to 'em.
issue is just I don't see any needs to change this now. And so
Okay.
So my direction to staff would be is, you can keep it on a list somewhere. Jerry, you got?
Yeah, on BB1. What was this? It goes from what's to what? BB1?
Get the map.
It is the from 1st to 27th, but it's the interior of both.
So this,
So if you're on First Street going towards Main Street, the right side is in the BB1 district. The left side is residential.
anybody on that residential decides to make a parking lot in between homes,
It's just the right side
just the right side.
of
Okay.
First and the left side of 27th.
All right. Okay.
So across the street on First or 27th is residential
Okay.
and could not be converted to a parking lot
All right, just want to make
or
sure.
a business for that matter.
Right. So again, we can sort of keep it out there and list and waiting for more compelling reasons, but I don't think I'd put this in the C priority range or something.
Yeah.
Okay, next, Ron, what would you like to discuss?
Sure. Third one is what I've labeled driveways and drainage, something that's been brought to my attention from our inspections department. We have section 3.24.A.4. It states that no one shall cause water to flow from their property onto or over the streets of the town, which sounds simple, except for there are some potential conflicts with some of these larger developments we're getting where they have a state stormwater permit that directs the water to the curb and then to the stormwater outlets.
Yeah.
And so we've been asked to look at that and try to create some standards that would exempt those developments with a master stormwater permit from the state that allows that to be directed to the curb.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you've got the stormwater permit, you're trying to direct the water from the lots into the street to get it to the stormwater ponds.
Right.
So,
Well, in my mind, I kind of rate this kind of the highest one. God's been helping me lately. I would kind of like a complete review of our stormwater, rainwater handling stuff. Whether we need is Mr. Sorrells is kind of our in-house expert. Would that be correct? Or is to review all of our standards related to stormwater, rainwater handling. The rain event. Like on the one we look at here, we've pushed that up to the 50-year rain event, which now in the last month seems entirely insufficient.
Yeah. I mean, in the last, 10 years, we've had 3
so
50
should we
years.
push that, generally review pushing the rain event up by code to a higher number than we have? We're relying on the county now, which I believe is technically still at 25, but they keep pushing it up every time they improve one at the planning board to 100. So I pulled some articles where they do that. So maybe we need to do that by code. And then also we got our 45% allowable for impervious? Why is that the magic number? Could we review? So I guess I'd really like to take up stormwater, rainwater as we need to bring the county person in. I forget his name, you just gave me the email.
Richard Christensen.
And Mr. Sorrell did to see, based on what appears to be happening, or, should we up our code, clear up our code, fix things that are obviously that are inconsistent already. So I almost like a general review of our rainwater handling in our UDO, that we're doing the best we can to properly handle large rain events, which we know that they occur. They've always occurred, actually. Whether they're bigger or more frequent now is a whole discussion I don't even need to get into, I guess. But is our code set up to handle? Because obviously aftermath is much harder than before the math. Should we up our code or clear up our code to build in this resilience, which we talked about a couple of years ago? So that's already so that we can handle more rainwater quickly. Are we moving it the proper ways so that we're not having flooded out roads, collapsed road, flooded out town hall or whatever? So I guess my position is, and I think this is somewhat on my highest priority at this point, well, almost maybe, is a sort of more holistic review of our handling, how our code address stormwater and rainwater, that we're doing the best we can to head off a disaster. Probably not possible for a Category 5 hurricane or something, but is that the code is trying to build for the future, is that we're not, all these little builds keep covering up more ground and adding more roofs and more driveway, and that cumulatively now we've really put ourselves in a bind. Yeah, they all met the code, but now we really can't handle big rain. If the rainwater is going somewhere, it's obviously going from uphill down to the ocean. Is it going to take out somebody's house or a road in the interim or not? And I know we can't avoid it all, but I guess I'm saying I think we should have a meeting scheduled, if it ain't the November one, maybe December or January, that we holistically look at all of our rain handling code and say, can we do better?
Well, if I could interject, Ron, I think a better way, a better approach for that is for one of you all to come on board with staff and let us review ours in addition to those that are surrounding us and the counties and maybe Horry counties, and bring us as staff and one of you all come together as a subcommittee and then bring you a document that would encompass everything instead of piecemealing as we go.
We could do that. I don't think any of us are stormwater experts. Maybe Stuart is. Okay.
Stuart's elected.
We've selected, but I just also, okay. Well, I guess what's your approach? What approach you think would be best for us to get? Perfection is not possible, but how do we get the best we can?
No, I think Lisa's probably got the right idea. I think we need to look at what's going on around us. I've looked through the code. We don't really address stormwater much because most of it's handled by the county
Or the state.
So there's really not a whole lot we can say, but we can clean up our code to, fix issues that are.
Well, I think
Not
one
working.
of the areas where we do have some impact is, relationship of pervious to impervious. What we require someone who exceeds that ratio. I mean, in the Northeast, if you exceed the ratio, you got to put that water on your property.
Yeah, we have that, and we also have this miraculous 1.5 inch number, which I've never had anyone really.
It came from the state.
Yeah, but without a time element, I struggle with that number. What does that mean? The first 1.5 inches in rain over a month, over 24 hours, over 4 hours,
Every event.
every event.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So I guess yes. So
Well, if Stuart's willing, let
If Stuart-
staff get
Yep.
together with Stuart and we'll
Okay.
figure out a path forward,
Right.
and we'll bring something back to you maybe December, January timeframe.
probably,
Okay.
and it seems like the county's open to pushing their rain event up. Now, how does that affect things? You know,
Right.
obviously, in my mind, if you push the rain event up to a larger rain event, you get more storage capacity. That's detention and retention, which is the time thing also. Drainage, the ditches, how it moves the water off, you know. So it seems like, in my mind, I first said, you know, seems like if the county doesn't move theirs up, it seems like they're open to having us move it up and tell them that's what we want to use. And
Yeah, I would be careful there though, because, and I'm sorry if I
No, you go.
go ahead.
step on that, because if our standards end up being more restrictive or more strict than the counties, then I'd rather have that conversation with the county to make sure they're willing to review a 50-year, 100-year storm, whatever we land on, with the staffing levels they have, instead of us just assuming that they're okay with it. They did agree to, in this particular case for Angel Trace, that we'll talk about later,
But like I
to
said,
review that from the 50-year storm, because the applicant conditioned that upon themselves, as well as town council
Right.
accepting that as a condition.
and like I said, I've pulled articles. I just found this one. But the county's doing it from their planning board, stipulating 100-year.
Yeah,
This was
Yeah.
Ashton Farms.
yeah, they are in certain
So in certain places, they're
certain-
doing it to themselves.
Yeah. in certain
Right.
approvals, conditional zoning district approvals, they are doing that, yes. But overall, requiring it for every development or in every situation, that's a little bit different than
Well,
master plan development.
but Stuart,
Also, I think given the most recent events,
well,
I think
yeah.
this is going to be top of mind. I would be shocked if the county commission.
And then there's a cumulative effect to this. Like I said, you
Yeah,
allow all the little, and then you end up with a lot of roof and driveway. And then, well, anyway, so the plan to move forward, and Stuart, you will work with staff,
yeah.
Okay.
and then have either maybe December meeting or January meeting, either have staff, and if county would like to come and help us with some instruct. I mean, I'm always willing to learn more on how to, so that we can holistically move ourselves
Yeah, I think,
into a
yeah,
better place. Because once the water comes, it's too late to say, gee, I wish we would have done.
Right. And we will
Yes.
definitely reach out and work with the county to
Right.
see and to make sure that we are in compliance with each other.
Right.
And if they're willing to go to their county commissioners and address an ordinance amendment at the county level, that would be great.
yeah.
But we will definitely work with them in addition to.
Perfect.
Well,
all
if we,
our
I mean,
other
if they could
neighbors.
come and give us a presentation like we got
Well,
from
we'll see.
NCDOT,
Let's
that would
let
be really
Stuart work on. We'll see what the best
Okay.
way. He may find that we don't need to do anything, I guess, but
Yeah,
I just feel we could do a little better.
yeah.
So we'll give you an update in November to give
Right.
you a heads up on if we're coming in December or January or later.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
perfect.
Riveting stuff, huh?
Okay, next round two.
Next one that I had on my list here was actually block length definition. Just reviewing the Angel Trace subdivision showed me that we do not have a definition of a block length.
Right.
And
I agree.
in my review of the code, the code currently is consistent with block length and roadway and intersection separation. Minimum and maximums are consistent. In situations where we have, like with Angel Trace, where council agreed to a condition working with the conditional zoning district to lower the block length and lower the intersection change, there's a potential conflict.
Because when you use
There.
the center lines, you're not getting to the right number.
Right. So yeah, but in
The
this
math doesn't really work.
an Angel Trace subdivision, it'd be better to talk about this after the Angel Trace, but we'll talk about it beforehand. The council approved a minimum block length of 370 feet and a minimum intersection separation of 290 feet. And in my mind, they're one and the same in a lot of situations, unless the intersection is offset, one on one side of the street or the other. So
And did the council, I mean, it's difficult to see on the drawings that we've been given. One of the big issues on 904 is you have egress on the 904 from offset.
That wouldn't count. The
Yeah.
block length is where homes are.
the block lengths
Okay.
in
We don't.
interior. I'm
We
talking about
don't,
interior
we don't even
development.
define it. Period.
I'm talking about
I
interior
searched our
development.
book.
Yeah.
We don't even define where is the block length.
Right.
Intuitively, it's the fronts of houses
Right.
is your block, right? But we don't even say that it's along the frontage. whether it's curb to curb, lot line to lot line. But I see, just searching what should be a block length, and Stuart can correct me because I'm probably wrong. It's center line of the perpendicular road to the center line of the other perpendicular road. And
Right.
intuitively, that's not my block.
Yep.
Is the
And-
road, but really it seems like that's the, let's call it reasonable and customary definition. So we don't even have a reasonable and at this moment, a reasonable and customary definition. So I think that should be our target, is to come up with a reasonable and customary definition so that we can apply irregardless of what happens in this conditional at this point. If we have, it sounds like we're going to need
So
a
we have-
definition.
So what you're saying, we have a number.
We have a
don't
number, but we don't
definition.
define it.
Yes.
Okay.
How to measure it.
How to define it? How do we measure it?
Where,
There's not in
where,
there.
do you point, where do you point the beginning of the
Because
statement?
look at,
Correct.
we don't even say it's the front.
Yeah.
Because you could say you got a lot and a lot back to back, right? And you got a road here. Is
Right.
that a block?
Right.
But it's on the sides of the property.
Right.
To me, the block's only on the front.
Right.
But we don't say either.
Yeah.
So we need to strive maybe as quick as we can. This may be one we pull up for November if possible.
And
That we come up. Hey, welcome, gentlemen. Your shoes don't appear to be wet.
Right.
so we'll look into that a little further.
Let me just say, we've moved through further down in the agenda. We'll come back to you. So you may have to sit through a little bit until we catch back up to you.
So, yeah,
So the block. So I think we should strive to come up with proper, reasonable, and customary block length definitions and dimensions, whether it's in the measurement part of our definitions or in the general part, so that our numbers, when people do lay out their roads and blocks, can
We
look
know-
at our numbers and say, this is what it is.
we know how to interpret.
Whether we do something here today that violates that,
I wouldn't use violation. I would use that there's some discretion
Right.
by the approval and
I'm,
council.
like I said, I told you earlier, I'm a little concerned whatever we do today may set temporary precedents. But
Mhm.
hopefully we can get this moving quick enough through us, through council, that maybe council gets it in early part of the year to correct it so that we're not setting a precedent today that extends for a long
Sure.
period of time.
Sure, and I would just say your code also does read, or the code does, block length should generally allow two-tier lots, and in every situation I've seen two-tier lots. So that's, just to kind of throw that out there. But I do think we're having some type of definition, some guidance, some guardrails, if you will, as we review these additional plans. That would be great.
So in my mind, I'd like to see whatever text amendment or definition at the November meeting.
And I'll talk a little bit more when we get to the Angel Trace subdivision, how that works here. So I have two more on this list here, brought to my attention from our building inspections department.
So we agree that November we'll have
Yeah, we'll look at
something to look at the not only fix,
define
but
and measurement.
properly codify it.
Right.
We'll attempt to have.
Yes. Loading up our November agenda. I'm joking.
Well, look, you got 2
Yeah.
months to do it.
Yeah.
Well, if
Right.
we don't set our sights high, we don't make anything.
That's right. That's right. The number 5 and 6 came from building inspections department. The mandatory requirements for residential homes. Apparently, there's been some changes to the building code, National Electric Code, beginning January of this year, to require an emergency disconnect to be installed outside of the dwelling and located in an accessible location for emergency services. So these situations where we have in the floodplain, maybe it's the beach as an example, the electrical panel has to be elevated outside, over the base flood elevation, but the code would require some type of stairs or something to get to that. And current code does not allow an encroachment into a yard. So let's say those stairs let's say that panel has to be elevated to 8 feet. There has to be a staircase to get to that panel. Code doesn't allow any encroachments in the setback. So if you have home that's on the ocean with a 5-foot setback, side setback, that's either a variance for a bunch of homes going through
What
the
about a
process.
What about a ladder?
I don't know that they can just have. I think it has to be some type of a permanent access, not as just throw a ladder out there when the panel needs to be reviewed.
A permanent
Built the
ladder
code.
attached to the wall?
So I'm not sure. So I just want to bring this to your attention. There's probably something we want to consider. So we can do it a couple of ways. Allow some type of encroachment when it's trying to comply with a building code or a higher standard. A code that has a higher standard.
So that's to allow access to a disconnect?
Or disconnect
Main
or whatever the
disconnect.
case. So, see, building code is generated and requiring a particular type of construction. Otherwise, you're requiring, you're in a 50-foot lot with 2 5-foot setbacks. Now you're looking at 40-foot home width. If you start putting in a stairwell that's 36 inches wide on a side, so now you're looking at what 37-foot wide home. So there's just we've got to figure it out. So I just want to bring it to your attention that it's something the staff believes we need to address.
So this stairway is to attain access to an electric master bedroom.
In this case, in this example, yes.
Yeah. Well, sometimes that can be fairly urgent. So I don't think we can do something temporary or it's,
Yeah. Sometimes codes will allow an encroachment into a setback or a yard for stairways,
Safety related.
safety related stairways or steps into a porch.
Yeah.
Heating and air units or whatever. And the next one is somewhat related as well. The next item on there. So
And that's only something in a flood area? What?
in this particular example, yes. So we want to expand it a little bit. I want to have an opportunity to review it a little bit more with our building inspector. But I wanted to bring it to your attention so you're not surprised if we bring something with more detail and more language in November, December timeframe for you to consider. Does that make sense?
so this would be on existing homes or existing structures that need to mitigate this, or is this on new structures?
New construction.
New construction.
New construction. It's something we need to be thinking about
Mhm.
moving forward, particularly in the flood situations where you do have to have some type of stairway to get to that panel.
Okay.
All right.
I guess no objection to that.
Yeah, we just
Yeah.
want to continue.
Not educated on that one.
Yeah, and I'm not either.
Right.
I need to be
so-
more educated on it, but I
Right.
wanted to bring it to your attention just so if we do come back to you in November, December timeframe with an amendment, you at least were aware of it and not just out of the.
Do we have some examples of how other barrier islands with flood districts handle this?
I don't at the time. Kerry may have sent me some information. He was going to try to send me some pictures. I just didn't get a chance to look at them before the meeting
Yeah.
today.
This just sounds like it's a pretty standard problem for those kind of communities. I'm sure there's some
So as
precedents.
as the general statutes change, and there's times we have to bring an amendment to you. So as the building code changes, we may have to do something similar.
Okay. I get it.
I want to fully understand it and see what the ramifications are before we bring something to you. Again, just didn't want to blindside you at the next meeting or two
Yeah.
and say, hey, you tell me where did this come from?
And Ron will be working with Kerry White, who's our
Yes.
chief building inspector,
Mhm.
to bring these amendments forward. So he'll be present if you have any questions during that discussion.
And then the last one is similar regarding encroachments, if you will. So the above ground tanks, LP tanks. Apparently, it's due to our CAMA buffer rules prohibiting the placement in their setbacks. Currently, underground storage tanks are allowed, so they could put it underground with a CAMA 30-foot setback buffer zone, and in the town, any town setbacks. The North Carolina Department of Agriculture regulates tank placement. The underground tank cannot be located within 10 feet from a property line, and therefore creates a problem due to the parking in the front yard and where outdoor parking patios and swimming pools are located. So above ground tanks can be located next to the structure and properly anchored in accordance with regulations. So we want to pursue that a little as well, similar with the electrical code, where above ground tanks may be allowed to be encroached into a setback provided 1, 2, 3, or if it, as to meet a building code standard or whatever the case may be.
What about
I'm not ready to propose language, but I wanted to at least I want to bring it to your
What
attention
about
so we
like
can pursue it.
screening? We'll cover screening and landscaping.
Yeah, we can look at that as well. Something's been brought to my attention recently, but again, just wanted to
And
bring it to your
anchoring,
attention.
of course, because you don't want it to.
I'm sorry.
And anchoring will be covered too, because you don't.
Yeah, it's required to be anchored. Sorry, required to be anchored by building code. Underground tanks have to be anchored as well.
So in terms of the building code, the anchoring issues are dealt with. We're really just looking at
allowing
Placement.
it, allowing things in the setback.
Allow it in the setback.
So if we allow it, then are there's, we want some screening or whatever. So it's if, and if we do, how.
Right. Okay.
So
That makes
again,
sense.
just want to pursue that. I'm not ready today to propose any language or any recommendations, but just wanted to bring it to your attention again, so you're not surprised the next,
And this is an issue for both the barrier island and the main.
yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks, Ron.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that ends that item. So we need to move back to item 6.1, which was the Angel Trace Phase 1B, 2, and 3 preliminary plat submittal. Ryan, you got the floor again.
All right, thank you. This is my first time handling a major subdivision plat with this town, so apologize if I've not provided you documentation or any information that you thought you should have gotten. Certainly we'll use this as a learning moment moving on, moving forward. What we have before you today is a major subdivision preliminary plat submitted by L&H Angels Trace Holding LLC for Angel Trace subdivision phases 1B, 2, and 3. We're looking at a total of 932 residential units and lots. This property is in the southwest quadrant of the intersection of Highway 179 and Side Road. It's approximately 331.78 acres in size.
I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
In terms of this aggregate number, it does not include Angel Trace Phase 1A.
Correct.
Now, is that part of the Ocean Ridge portion
Angel,
of the development, or is that going to be part of the Angel Trace?
it's already been submitted. It was existing 13 lots that were modified slightly.
Okay.
And
been
so
approved.
they've already gone through the subdivision minor. It was a minor subdivision that has already been reviewed and approved.
Okay. So again, that's part of the, even though it's referred to, are those homes associated with the Ocean Ridge development, or are they part of the
I
Angel
think it's part of
Trace?
this development. It was just on the first phase 1A. Matt.
All right, welcome back.
Yeah, Matt Haley, Cape Fear Engineering. Yes, the land in which those 13 lots reside was part of the purchase, but they were always planned, and all of the utility infrastructure was installed as part of Ocean Ridge, and they were included in the rezone, but they will be ultimately part of the Ocean Ridge community.
Okay, so they, because they're on the main road there in Port
They're on the
Thermal.
main road, and they've already, been finally platted, and I think building permits have been pulled for some of them, and construction's underway. But yes, they're part of the Ocean Ridge proper development.
So my issue is, why is this segregated? If it's part of the conditional zoning request, why are those units not included in the count for single-family homes in terms of the 1,540 limit and the 740 single-family commitment?
They
Why
are-
is it?
They are included in the maximums, but since they were already recorded, we didn't feel it appropriate to include them as part of a preliminary plat request.
Yeah.
Okay, so
But they are part of the Angel Trace
Okay.
and the overall unit caps and unit types, etc.
Correct.
But in terms of the number that Ron is sharing with us, they are not reflected.
No, the
They're not
numbers,
part of the
the
932
numbers she
total.
shared are part of the 3 phases. But when you get to totaling them up,
Because there's
it's
additional
under the
units
cap.
as part of the multifamily and other
Right.
things that are not part of this request that are still being tracked
So if you
under
wanna
the
think
zoning
about it,
for 15.
If you want to do a running total, there's the original 13. Is that what it was?
Yeah,
Original 13, yes.
So even before we get to this, there's already 13.
right.
And now we're going to add, and then they're going to add, and then they're going to add, and suddenly we get to the total, which will be under the agreed upon
Right.
cap.
So in essence, the original proposal was for 740 single family. Right now, what is in front of us in terms of 1B, 2, and 3 is 670, and those 13 homes would now run that number up to 683. Correct? Okay. All right, thanks.
Yes, sir.
And it would run the total household number up to 937.
945.
Well, I have 670, 148, and 106 comes to 904, 924.
I was looking at 932 plus, but yeah, but we're tracking it.
Okay. All right.
All right. Angel Trace Conditional Zoning District and Development Agreement were approved by Town Council at its July 18th meeting. You do have a unit breakdown in your case summary. I'll go over those. Overall, single family 740. Phase 1B was approved by council with 6, and this proposed is showing 6. Phase 2 approved by council was 355. And phase 2 as being proposed by this preliminary plan is 314. Phase 3 approved 366 single family with phase 3 being proposed at 358. I won't go through each one of those, but you'll see in essence that except for phase 1B, which they are maximizing the number of units allowed by council. The other 2 phases, phases 2 and 3, are actually have fewer units than what was allowed by council in those phases. All right, the preliminary subdivision plan establishes a minimum of 49.71 acres of open space, and that's based on 15% of the gross acreage. And they are providing 51.47 acres of open space, which is in excess of the minimum requirement. And the open space is, as proposed, does not include sidewalk areas, any wetlands, surface waters, or areas below the temporary pool, stormwater ponds, or any required buffer areas. That is consistent with code and consistent also with the conditional zoning requirements. Staff's review of the open space appeared to meet, it shows that it appears to meet the minimum 50-foot wide and at least one distance. And each area is at least 5,000 square feet or 0.11 acres in size. And the applicant has proposed a natural pollinator garden as required by the conditional zoning district. Trees, there are no heritage trees being proposed to be removed, and they are being proposed to be protected at the drip line, which is consistent with the approval of the conditional zoning district. They are proposing street trees at 50-foot spacing intervals as required by the UDO. Water and sewer is provided by the Brunswick County Public Utilities.
Hold up on trees
Yes,
once.
yes, sir.
The only one that 710, that's in that little island,
Mm-hmm.
the drip line's in the roadway.
all the way across the road.
Yeah. I guess, which is
Not being protected.
right. But I applaud the attempt to make sure it is protected. But I guess, maybe we need the applicant here. Some language or a note or something, if 710, I think I have the number right, that's sitting in that little island, roadway island, is damaged, that you will mitigate that with 32 inches of live oak nearby or as close as possible to that area. I applaud you you moved your roadways around to try to make sure we save that tree. That's good. But in the event you have to undercut or something comes up there, I forget. It's on page
Oh,
D1.
okay.
No, that's
Yeah, I got it. Thanks.
a note or something saying that if it can't be saved, it will be mitigated with 32 inches of live oak somewhere nearby if possible. Maybe you get 1 or 2 small ones back in that island and then put the other. That's assuming there's 2-inch trees, right? You've got 16 other live oaks to put in. Maybe you get 1 or 2 in that island as replacement and then some others nearby. I mean, I applaud the effort to try to save it, which is what we prefer to do. But obviously sometimes rubber hits the road, literally in this part. in this spot here, something could damage it, and then
Well, and I'm a neophyte in terms of these.
I guess I don't know if our code that specifically requires that. Should a tree get damaged in construction beyond they have to mitigate it no matter what, right?
I
Are we
believe
sure on
so.
that?
I believe so. I would have to comply.
Or just a note added to that tree, knowing clearly the drip line is in a construction area, right?
It's not going to live.
You
It's
don't-
just a matter of time.
Could live
Mr.
with-
Chairman, so
Yeah.
just so I understand, we're talking about the contingency. If the tree's doesn't survive, the plan A, the goal is to preserve the tree
Right.
in that location as depicted on the plan. You're asking what happens if that doesn't work, if the tree doesn't survive. Mr. Satterfield, do you know what the code requires of us in that scenario?
Yeah,
anyway?
I'm trying to find it, Mr. Frank. I'm trying
More
to
than-
find the standard.
We're
Mr.
more
Frank.
than happy to do what you describe. I just don't want to overwrite the code. If the code already contemplates that scenario and dictates what we need to do.
Well, I guess maybe I'm asking a little tougher because I believe it's a 32-inch live oak, right?
It's a heritage tree, is that right?
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. But
So I'm kind of asking for 32 inches of live oak, which probably code maybe requires you to do 50% of that as a live oak, and
Oh, I see. Okay.
but
You understand we can't buy and plant a 32-inch live
No,
oak
no.
that would be
32 inches of,
Okay.
I have one in my
which
front
is
yard.
probably 16 2-inch trees or whatever,
Okay.
uh,
Understood.
to be as mitigated as close by as reasonably possible.
To the extent the code doesn't already require 32 inches of mitigation, we're fine with that recommendation.
I have maybe a silly question here, but it appears, and maybe we boxed ourselves in with the block requirements, but it appears you've got some land behind those duplexes that if you push the front line of those duplexes back, you'd have a little more road area.
Yeah, and what makes that area particularly challenging is the area that we're calling Phase 1B
Mm-hmm.
was part of the original Ocean Ridge Phase 6 2D, and the existing roadway stub and utilities that were installed as part of Section 2 kind of limit the direction and alignment of that road.
Okay.
And that tree being located in a bifurcated island, as currently shown, dates back 10 plus years
Okay.
and how that area was originally master planned. We've attempted to provide the proposed grading in that area, at or near existing grade to, do everything we can to make sure that tree has a best chance of survival. But as Mr. Frank just said, I think the compromise, if for some reason that tree is not able to make it, to go
Okay.
back in and plant, live oaks within that area equaling 32 inches makes a lot of sense and is very reasonable.
Okay. So in essence, the
So I guess-
infrastructure that's already been laid down there requires that the
Yeah.
road be there.
There, otherwise it would be a very harsh, turn and angle
Okay.
of the roadway and deflection of the utilities.
Good.
So we've tried to honor that tree placement best we can,
Okay.
consistent with what's been planned for over a decade.
All right.
Okay, so I don't know what's going on. You're in the table. I guess my concern on all these things is that we document this on some sort of list if we get to a vote at some point, that is agreed upon as what you
Mitigation.
might want to call it let's just call it a clarification. I don't want to get, what's an exception or a clarification to what might turn out to be an approval or not. So that we have 710, it's in jeopardy, so to speak, and the applicant has agreed to, if jeopardy comes to fruition and it can't be saved, that they will mitigate it with the appropriate DBHs as reasonably possible in the nearby area.
Well, can we, I mean, we're creating an island for trees. Can we make
Well,
a
I'm
requirement that whatever mitigation occurs in that island?
They can't get
They can't get
Get-
16 trees.
They've got to be 50 feet apart. I imagine you might get one or two there. I didn't
Yeah.
dimension it.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? They could probably maybe get one or two there. I didn't measure that to see how big it is. to see if you get 2 there, and the rest got to be.
Yeah, I mean the interests here are aligned. First
Right.
and foremost, if we can preserve that 32-inch tree in the middle of the streetscape, it's a fantastic feature to the,
Right.
the
Yeah.
character of that section of the neighborhood. That's absolutely Plan A. If for some reason that tree fails, Mr. Jones is right. We can't plant 16 trees in that
Right.
island. And what we would want to do is have the flexibility to try to recreate that character of streetscape in the
Right.
general
So I'm
area.
assuming you would try to put 1 or 2 back there, whatever fits, and
Okay.
then get them around there as close as possible.
If you could leave us a little bit of flexibility to tackle that problem, in terms of location of where the trees go, should it arise, we'd be grateful.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
whatever the code allows. So if for some reason during construction you realize you can't save that tree, it is required to be mitigated by
Yes.
the code. And then we would just work with the code to see where those trees would have to be
Yeah.
planted, replanted.
But in that phase or
being
in that
that it's
general area, all of
32 inches of live oak.
Yes. So they would have to meet the mitigation requirements for a 32-inch live oak. If
No,
If it come-
I'm saying something different, and I guess maybe I'm not clear. I believe the mitigation requirements do not require exactly 32 inches of live oak
no,
to
no,
be
no.
planted. It's 50% of the heritage tree in some cases. So I don't want 16 inches of live oak and 16 inches of uppercut oak.
But I think we got to be careful. We
Right.
can't place a condition on the approval. We have to go by what the code says. So they could have proposed that tree to be removed, period. They're making some efforts to preserve it. So they could have just shown the island. I understand that. But you're showing it.
yes, sir.
And so they would, if they didn't preserve it, they would have to comply with our code, whatever the code standards are for mitigation.
That's a good point. Yeah. So notwithstanding our willingness,
Mhm.
at this stage, all we can do is assess whether or not the subdivision plan is consistent with your code, and reiterate our commitment to comply with your code moving forward, come what may.
Anybody else on this topic, so we can let Ron 2 move on from trees to stormwater? We can always come back to it.
Move on.
Move on.
Sorry about that. And so water and sewer is provided by Brunswick County Public Utilities. Utility and stormwater plan sets have not been submitted to Brunswick County at this time unless something's changed, just the writing of the code. Excuse me, the writing of this case summary. I provided you an email, I believe. I don't have it. Brunswick County has agreed to review the project with a 50-year pre-post condition imposed by the conditional zoning district requirements that the applicant offered and the town council accepted. All roads proposed to be to the standards outlined in the CZ zoning district. The roadway width for Road 1 from Seaside Drive to the roundabout is 26 feet, as measured from edge of pavement to edge of pavement, and 28 feet, measured from curb face to curb face. Sidewalks proposed on at least one side of all streets. And the applicant contends the minimum maximum block length and intersection separation is compliant with the CZ rezoning conditions. And I know we had a conversation about block lengths. Do we want to define it or not in our code? But I will say that the plan appears to be consistent with the layout that town council approved in the master development plan, as far as the block lengths and intersection separation requirements. I believe the applicant has provided some information in the plan on how they were defining or how the thought process of what a road block length is. Is that correct, Matt?
My question is, perhaps I missed something here, but because I've looked at the development agreement, I've looked at the conditional zoning, I don't see anything that addresses the MR3 requirement for minimum lot size. And I think in our discussions back in February, we were comfortable with a conditional zoning change that represented the pre-existing minimum of 7,500 square feet, despite the fact that that is not currently in compliance with our MR3 UDO. And I'm seeing single-family lots in this that do not meet 7,500 square foot condition. Now, if that is embedded somewhere in the conditional zoning document, enlighten me. If it's not, then why are we considering lot sizes in this conditionally rezoned area that do not reflect the MR3 standard? And, you know, I think we were perfectly happy to go ahead with a MR3 conditional zoning amendment or change that would allow for 7,500 square foot lots, but I'm a little mystified as why we're looking at lot sizes that are significantly lower than 7,500 square feet that are included as single-family lots.
Yeah, I just got this thing last night, so I haven't read it completely. So again, maybe town can help where that's covered in all these conditions. I'm trying to read it quickly now, which is, I mean, obviously the number is here. I'm trying to find either in the list of conditions or how that's addressed on this document, like through the attachment. Is that how it's done? Because it's in the notes on the attachment. Is that maybe how it's? Is that how it's? Oh, maybe I'm sorry. I'm not. You can explain if clear that up, I guess.
No, as I understand it, the primary condition, first condition, is that it will be consistent, materially consistent with the site plan. Site plan sets forth those lot sizes on sheet CS0, and therefore that's our understanding of what that parameter is to be for the conditional zoning. Is that consistent with staff's interpretation?
That was consistent with my interpretation. So when I was reviewing, I looked at the preliminary plat that was submitted and compared it to the layout, if you will, of the conditional zoning plan that was approved by council.
Yes, sir.
And so that was my
Right. So that's covered on what is that I1 sheet index, where it has all the lot sizes, right? Setbacks and lot sizes.
Come on up, Matt. You're better with the plan.
Yes, I believe that was the sheet designation from the conditional zoning plan set. I1 that included the site data table, all the description of unit counts, open space, etc. It included language for minimum lot size for single family, detached single family duplex and townhouse. And that same information has been provided on sheet CS0 of the preliminary plat set.
But it's nowhere in the conditional zoning.
Well, it is because they refer to the site
Refer
plan.
to it.
That's part of it.
I'm sorry, say it again.
In part of these conditions, number one, the use and development of the subject property, and I'm stepping on the legal person here, so he'll stop me if I'm. Condition number one, the use and development of the subject property shall be generally consistent with the site plan approved in connection with this rezoning, including without limitation, consistency with the matters set forth in attachment A. So the site plan in all this pile that we just got last night, all those drawings, when you get back to the end here,
Yeah, no, I'm
Okay.
looking at the
yes, so these pictures are part of the conditions. You stop me when I get off the rails here.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. You're
That because
correct.
this is part of when you get to sheet index, I guess I1, on the right-hand side here, they spell out all the numbers of the properties, the lot sizes, the
But
number
it's
of
in the-
units, the
in the
setbacks.
zoning.
So this document here is part of the conditions because of condition number one. Am I correct?
You're exactly correct.
So
And
we're
for
talking
further-
conditional zoning CZMA 2023-02.
and
Is that
our
what we're referring to this?
Right.
Yes.
in our staff review, we looked at that conditional
that
zoning
package
district
is
plan that was
this.
approved
Plan set.
and the preliminary plat review, and we saw not only lot sizes appeared to be consistent, but you also had reduced setbacks, as shown on what council approved from what MR3 normally would require.
So the
So-
setbacks reflect
So, as an
Yes.
example,
the what's outlined in the zoning agreement, but nowhere. So what I am to understand is these drawings that indicate lot sizes are part of the conditional
Yes.
zoning request as amended?
Yes. It's
And I can further explain that in our discussions with council in connection with the zoning, it was important to the council that there be a single document that could be referred to forevermore as evidence of all the details of the conditional zoning. And they wanted the plan to be that document. That's why you see additional verbiage in this plan that might not typically be there with the specific zoning conditions that are not depicted graphically, but rather in verbiage on the
Well,
plan itself.
if that reflects the wisdom of the town council, I mean, we serve at their pleasure.
Right.
But
I mean, our job generally going forward, the way I see it, is that every time they submit a preliminary plat, we need to make sure it agrees with
agree
this
with that. The
and
plan.
or the UDO if there's something not
Right.
addressed.
So we're looking at
Right.
the approved plan that council had. We're looking at the conditions approved by council and accepted by the applicant. We're also looking at the development agreement approved by council and by the
And just to
signed
make
by
the
applicant.
applicant aware, this is only the second one we're dealing with. So
Sure.
apologize that we may seem to be like minor leaguers here. Making
well,
sure we
also,
understand the process.
we received this. I mean, I just got this yesterday.
Yeah.
No, not in the least. There are overlapping and complex regulations that are specifically applicable to this site. I get it. I totally get it. What the council was encouraging us to achieve was to get the conditional site plan, the conditional zoning site plan, to a place that could be the point of reference that incorporated everything beyond the code itself that you needed to reference. And so I share that just to explain, not only is the site plan incorporated as a condition, but the goal, as
Right.
directed by council, was to create that in a way that it could be the sole source of information.
So I guess
Staff-
in
So,
this,
so in
particular-
essence,
in this particular topic, Richard, what we have to verify is on CS0, where they show a minimum lot size, single family detached, 47 by 20 is 5,640 square feet.
right.
That there's nothing in this plan not meeting that, and that also CS0, then when you look at I1 in here, it's exactly the same numbers, which I'm sure it is, but I didn't.
Oh, well,
actually look,
I guess I understand the principle here.
which it is.
But it seems to me the purpose of a zoning definition is to define what the developer can do, as opposed to letting the developer define what the definitions are. So basically, we've legally taken this document and bundled it up as the definitive definition of what the conditional zoning requirements are. That's the
Well,
byproduct of the wisdom of the town council.
well,
Then we
I
can
don't
move
see it
on.
that way. It's covered under the conditional zoning ordinance. This ordinance is part of the UDO now.
Right.
Right.
My concern is the
Okay.
ordinance makes moot
That's-
any of the issues that we struggle with in terms of defining in a 2-year process what the MR3 is supposed to be.
This is no longer MR3. It is
Right.
now CZMA-2023-02.
Yeah.
It's hard. I know these concepts are a little, and I struggle with it equally.
Yeah,
This is no longer MR3.
right.
Ron, that's a good point. I was going to try to clarify.
Right.
You've helped very, very well there. Each time there's a conditional zoning district, think of it as almost little own zoning code is created.
Right.
Or zoning rules. So now we have this MR3 conditional zoning district range of trace. Parts of the existing code are required.
I don't want to belabor this.
So
My instinct is that you create the rules and then the document reflects the rules. What we're doing here is saying this document creates the rules, and we don't have to apply rules to the document. I'm uncomfortable with that as a precedent. Town council obviously has approved it, so we can move on.
Okay. So,
Okay. All right, so moving on.
so on the roadway, yes. And I was trying to figure it out, but I know there was a big to-do about this undercut thing, but just tell me, the undercut description in these plan meets what the council agreed to.
That's my
I
review.
just want that simple explanation.
Yeah.
There you go. With the professional engineer and,
That's my review. But Matt,
Right.
on Matt, I don't know if you want to expand on that a little bit, but that was my understanding. That was my review. We're good.
Yeah, we're good.
right. And block length, even though we're going to take this up separately later for general rule and definition, they, if they would like to come up and say, they conform with the block length and intersection separation that was agreed upon in the conditional zoning. Absolutely.
That's, yeah, they've provided some information, man, I forget what page it's on, but how they believe they comply with that rule.
Well, on D0, right? What is it? C?
Yes, if you look at sheet RW0, it's maybe 10 or so back in the plan set. This series of drawings is intended to provide detailed geometric information for the roadways, intersection angles, center line radiuses, as well as the distance between intersections and where blocks are defined. And on sheet RW0, we have added notes 7 and 8 under the roadway geometry notes to provide the definition of the block length and intersection distance that were used to show compliance with the zoning conditions.
Can we just, to help me out on this, turn to page RW-2? And sort of in the center of the page there, along roadway 10, just to the right of its intersection with roadway 11 and roadway 4, there's like 3 parcels there where you're saying the intersection distance is plus or minus 293 feet. You're measuring that for the center line of roadway 4 to the center line of roadway 11?
That is correct.
Now, how is that a block length? Because that's saying center line to center line to me. So what you're saying is, because this is where I struggle with this thing. We're saying the block length should be no less than 370 feet. If using my number, right?
The minimum.
But in this case, we're saying it's okay to be 293 feet because why is it not a block?
So there's no stopped condition along roadway 10.
Right.
So we've looked at intersection distance as the length of roadway between 2 intersecting roads, with at least one end being a thoroughfare road. So essentially, where you have a road without a stop condition.
So there's no stop on road 10, even though it crosses road 4, because it's a
Correct.
T,
Yes.
not
Yes,
not
it'd be a T. So there'd be a
Right.
stop condition at the end of road 4 and a stop condition at the end of road 11 and through traffic through road 10.
Yeah, this is the one I'm struggling with because I guess and we're stuck living with it, I think, because it is what it is. But to me, the homeowner views their block as between road 4 and road 11 for those 3, I guess there's 3 parcels there where homes will be built. But it's really not their block because there's no stop on the road.
As a homeowner, I would think that the road, I would consider between road 11 and where road 10 intersects road 12,
The curve.
the curve.
That whole that whole length of houses is the block, even though 4 comes in on a T.
Yeah.
Just tell me I shouldn't worry about it. Because I'm worrying about it. Okay. And I don't know how. Okay. And I don't know how many of those we got. I just happened to see that one.
Right.
And I just put my red line. I mean, there's other ones here where you seem to have loops going around to traffic circles where. Okay. So I guess you're confident from staff that the meeting
We're confident
the
from
370 and 290 were appropriate.
Yes. I'm comfortable with that.
And we don't see any detrimental effect to the citizens that will live there.
I don't. I mean, this plan appears to me to be consistent with the plan that was approved by council. There's good pedestrian connectivity, sidewalks throughout the development. It meets the intent of the code where it says 2 lots depth. that same page you're looking at, say where those townhomes are as an example. And with the absence of a definition of what a block length is in our town code, I believe the applicant has provided a good definition for the purpose of this development to comply, showing compliance. But I think the main thing for blocks, a lot of times, is for connectivity. It's for breaks in traffic. It's for aesthetic reasons. Those, and I believe overall that complies with this.
Sure. Continue.
So
I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
We're kind of in the area right now looking at it. There was a proposed walkway in this area that would allow residents to enter the commercial zoning area via a pathway.
Yes.
Is that reflected here, or am I?
Yes.
That's
I have questions on it,
it
but if you
right
want to
there.
address it now.
But it looks like this. So this area is actually a wetland in here, where that's. Is that my interpretation of the?
So the pedestrian walkway that you're referring to, Mr. Dysner, is best reflected on the CS, the enlarged site plan series of the sheets.
Okay, but in
Yeah.
essence, that has been preserved.
Yes.
Well,
And I think that what you're seeing as wetlands is the 50-foot stormwater setback.
Okay.
And the intent is to have that pedestrian walkway meander along the wetlands and the creek there, utilizing some of the old historic golf cart crossings where it makes sense to, get from one side to the other. But no, that walkway and the intent to provide pedestrian connectivity from the subdivision to the rear of the commercial is still maintained in this plan.
Okay, and these folks are going to walk across Road 4. Will there be a pedestrian walkway there that requires drivers to yield the right of way to the pedestrian?
Yes, I think there'd be crosswalk and curb wipe downs as
Okay.
part of the final design to facilitate that
Okay.
road crossing.
Great.
Yes, sir.
But don't go anywhere.
Yep.
Because I have some issues on what we're talking about, so I'll just do it now. And on I0 in the table, on the attachment A table on the right-hand side, third box, it says additional multi-use trail has been incorporated in addition to required sidewalks to promote pedestrian connectivity. Okay, so we're talking about that where Richard was, the dotted dashed line that goes essentially from what is known as commercial CS2 along the drainage path all the way down to Road 1, right?
Yes, sir.
I thought originally it actually did jump that road and go around the pond. You could probably tell me I'm remembering that wrong. And I think it should go around all the way down to the pond to connect all the properties, but that's a separate issue. But you're calling it in the box a multi-use path, but then on the drawings you call it a pedestrian pathway, which to me is different. Because a multi-use path, and I looked up NC DOT standards to see what that should look like, is wider, paved. I pulled up what NC DOT says a multi-use path should look like, and we have no detail on that anywhere in here other than that. Now, I'm sure you probably haven't spent much time on this at this point. And there's this multi-use path thing from NC DOT. So, is it a pedestrian path, or is it my first question is, based on what someone's agreed to, is it a multi-use path or a pedestrian sidewalk?
They are one and the same. I think that for clarity, we would want to update the labeling on the CS sheets to call it a multi-use path, so it's very clear that that condition applies to that site feature.
Okay.
And I think that we would be
then
fine to
we
add
don't have
additional detail.
Yeah,
to
we don't have anything. We don't even have anything that tells it its width.
Right.
Is it paved or not paved? I think
So,
we need that detail.
Multi-use path would be paved, right?
Right.
It would be paved. Now, there may be some portions of that need to be pervious pavement based on the proximity to the stormwater setback. Those design details haven't been fully defined as to where those different transitions would be, but the intent is that it would be a wider, hardscape surface.
Because in my mind, when I see pedestrian sidewalk, that means foot traffic only. Oh. And when I see multi-use, that means non-motorized wheeled product, which would be obviously bicycle. I'm not sure where an e-bike falls in this anymore. I'm a little behind on that.
Now, I think the intent would be to be largely used for pedestrian, but probably some, bicycles and things like that. The intent's not to provide it to where it could be, golf carts, small vehicles, things like that.
Non-motor, in
Yeah.
my mind, it would be foot traffic and non-motorized wheeled product. So that would be skateboards, rollerblades,
Yeah.
bicycles. I'm not, like I said, I'm not sure what an e-bike is technically. Is it a bicycle or is it a motorized vehicle?
Who knows?
And I'm assuming golf carts are no, and obviously
Yeah.
motorized licensed vehicles
Right.
are absolutely no. But my question is, we don't have any detail of what it looks like. Not even a width dimension. I could not find. Anybody else find? Like it's
No.
10 feet wide, paved, either pervious or non-pervious as
Yeah, I
appropriate.
think the intent would to make it slightly wider than the sidewalks, 6-8 feet wide. But one of the things that we need to double check prior to setting that width is just the impervious coverages that would be allowed within that setback. But I think we can certainly update the plans to call it the multi-use path and provide a cross-sectional detail specifying a minimum, say 6 feet wide.
Current code is 10.
Yeah, I would
Correct.
say,
That was adopted by the council.
I believe so.
Right. So our current is 10 foot on multi-use.
yeah. And I would see that as, and this is another area
But
where,
I don't know if you have, like say, I don't know, I can't tell if you have technical issues, right? Like you're saying, the impervious and stuff has to be addressed, and I'm certainly open to those. And like I say, I suppose you guys haven't spent 100 hours of engineering on this yet. You've had bigger fish to cover on this, sir.
Your code requires multi-use paths be 10 feet wide.
Well, current code, or I'm saying it says all sidewalks and multi-use paths meet ADA requirements, unless I'm not looking in the right place.
It's the newest one.
The newest one, if it was approved approved by council after they came into, after the project.
Yeah, but
Was
that wasn't
approved.
defined. So a thing's not defined in the CZ is UDO, falls back to the UDO.
But if the UDO changed after they got their approval,
No,
Oh.
they have approval for a zoning change with condition. If there's no condition that addresses this, it's the perverbious crack. And I'm open-minded to what's technically possible or not, but since the only condition they approved is that there's something there. But
and I can share with the planning board that in developments that have used multi-use paths that I've seen, places like in Leland, Brunswick, Forest, those paths are 10 feet wide. So I think if the code says 10 feet, then I think if we want you to define it as a multi-use path, then we need to have a 10-foot standard.
I believe the development agreement locked the code at the time of approval as being applicable to this development. But also, our interest is the same as yours. We want a multi-use path that's effective. I raised my eyebrows about a 10-foot multi-use path because at some point, the width gets to a point that you invite people to drive the golf cart down it, which is what you're trying to avoid, trying to establish it for pedestrian use. But that's beyond my expertise as to what that magic number is.
Well, the issue is if you make it too narrow and you got pedestrians and bicyclists on the same path, that to me represents a greater threat.
unfortunately, I experienced that in
Yep.
my
Yeah.
previous town. Is a bicyclist got into a conflict with a pedestrian and a something else. I forget. It was a bicycle, pedestrian, maybe a rollerblader.
Right.
And it ended up the bicyclist fell, hit his head, and died that evening because they didn't properly line it out, have wheels here, feet here. So
So,
Yes, ma'am.
so today you're looking at a preliminary subdivision plat, and the level of detail that we're describing, there's no subdivision of land associated with the path. The path is going to meander through a section of common area. And so the level of detail we're describing for how wide the path will be, how it'll be striped, how it'll be curved is dictated by your code.
And our code says in 4.11, in lieu of placing sidewalks on both sides of the street, the subdivider may install a connected multi-use path and greenway network a minimum width of 8 feet.
Which has now been up 10. That was just changed.
But that
Yeah,
changed
and
after the
after.
fact.
And after their approval.
Well, and
Okay. So
perhaps
that-
more importantly, no aspect of approving the preliminary subdivision plat changes that. Compliance with that technical standard, and I believe Ms. Anglin has the right of it, that the code as of the date that the zoning was approved, the development agreement was approved is what applies. But regardless of what the tech standard is applicable to this, it's not adapted in any way by your approval of the preliminary.
Well,
subdivision
but
plat.
as if it goes through things that are preliminary platted here, I guess by right, I say it does. I know what you're saying. It's if it, and I believe it is crossing into some of these that we're looking at today, right? It crosses through that. So even though,
If we were depicting a 4-foot wide path or a strip of land that was only 4 feet wide, and that was all we had for the pedestrian multi-use path, you'd be absolutely right. But in this case, we haven't depicted anything that's inconsistent with the code or that confines us in a way that we can't comply with the text standard due to a subdivision boundary. That said, if you want to get to the bottom of it here, we'll get to the bottom of it here. I just acknowledge that regardless of approval of the preliminary subdivision plat, we're bound by the text standards in the code that apply to this.
So my understanding is the text standard that Lisa has quoted us does not apply because it came after your.
no, that was in there
That's-
before.
She
that is-
quoted the
does
one that
apply.
was in place
Okay,
at
so
the time of their.
so the code that's in place is an 8-foot.
So I guess is that
8-foot minimum.
8-foot, yeah, 8-foot minimum, correct. All right.
So
So
because of the nature of the section that's wet nearby, we weren't able to establish a vehicular connection
Yeah,
between
no,
the commercial
understood.
and the residential. So we want this to work as well as it can
Mhm.
to provide a point of interconnectivity to energize that connection between the residential and the commercial. I realize that's not a
Now, it-
change on the plan, but it's a comment we're sharing with you that our motivation is similar to yours. We want this thing to work well to move people safely and effectively and in decent numbers between.
No, and I think it's a great feature of the plan. I just wasn't
Okay.
sure that it had been preserved in this
my,
preliminary plat due to my naivete about what dotted lines represent.
my concern as an engineer, it's undefined, undrawn, undetailed, and somewhat, which they've corrected, I guess, orally described. It's described in the table as a multi-use path, and then pointed to, which is I can see how it could easily happen, pointed to elsewhere as pedestrian, and to me that's different. Because a pedestrian can be 5 foot.
Right.
It's a sidewalk.
That's a fair point.
But if it's multi-use, whether it's the old code or the new code, it either is, let's just say 8 foot, I'll stipulate. That's different. And so
So
are we saying that
intend
we
to
have
use
enough to say, or
Well,
So-
my concern, sorry, go ahead, Sam. I interrupted.
per the conditional zoning site plan, there's a commitment and an obligation to establish a pedestrian walkway there. We've told you that our intention is to create a multi-use path there. That's what we want to have there instead. That satisfies the zoning requirement that we establish pedestrian interconnectivity. Multi-use includes pedestrian interconnectivity. If we go above and beyond what the zoning requirement is and incorporate multi-use, we must comply with the technical requirements for a multi-use path.
well, but the
And so-
zoning requirement is multi-use.
Is it? Am I
It's in-
mistaken there?
It's in this box right here.
Okay.
It says additional multi-use trail has been incorporated in addition to required sidewalk to promote pedestrian connectivity. The term is multi-use trail. I'm assuming that's the
So we need
condition
to-
that was agreed to.
So we need to update the preliminary plan, preliminary plat to reflect rather than pedestrian walkway, multi-use path.
Right.
And you'd like to see the detail included that shows
Something.
the section.
Just
Right.
Yeah.
just a cross section.
Yeah,
Cross
I get
section.
it. I get it. All
Am
of
I-
that's achievable.
Did I make any sense on it?
No,
Does
it's
everybody
fine.
understand what I'm
Yes.
saying? Okay. Do we agree, Brian,
Yes.
too, that that's how it's supposed to be? Or
And that's
what
not,
they just said, it's a multi-use
Yes.
path, and they will conform to the standards that are applicable to them. But that then meets the condition.
Yes, sir. And what I heard conversation is they're going to update their plans and not only change those CS plans to show the multi-use path, but also they're going to provide a detail,
a cross section. Yes,
cross,
sir.
Cross-
a cross section of detail
Picture.
showing the standard complies with the town code.
And that is fair game for the purview of this proceeding because we're not changing the law or the zoning conditions. We're just establishing how we're going to demonstrate compliance with them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
What's Ron doing with his?
Well, the only thing I thought he might want to do before we move on is in response to the I don't know if you want to go through these all or everybody have a chance. We just also, the responses to all the TRC things have been cleared up. I don't just want to say everything. So I was at the TRC meeting, you guys were not. So I don't know, maybe you want to go through this or do you want them to go through it that they've
I mean,
so these questions that were brought up or concerns were, I guess, seemingly resolved all over.
my review, they seem to be resolved, particularly the planning items. And
So
yes, sir.
just a general question. If you've got TRC comments and then they respond to those comments, do they respond in writing or
They
do you
did.
just get,
We got
Yeah.
this. I mean,
I didn't get that.
Well, that's the issue. I mean, do we need to go over that? Because I don't know if not everybody has that.
did you not?
Yeah, I didn't get it.
This morning.
I haven't passed them out. That's why.
Oh,
Sorry, I thought I did earlier. I apologize for that. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, Stuart.
I got one. Here's two for you. You got one down there?
Thanks.
To approve street names, I can go down line by line if you want to. I mean, right now they're showing road 10, road 8, road 12, whatever the case may be. Ultimately, they will have to get either those road names approved or they will change the names prior to the final plat being done. And yeah, and that's to the Brunswick County. My second comment there was Appendix A showing sufficient data, engineering data. And they provided boundary data for all lots. They will provide boundary data for all lots at the time of final plat. Length, width, and area of all lots have been provided on preliminary plans. And I believe also the RW plans, particularly in stormwater plans, show a lot of the details necessary for that as well. Section 4.9C1 confirms streets will be designed to DOT standards, and they have concurred that they will be designed as also not just DOT but also to the standards approved by council. We've already talked about the confirmation from Brunswick County that the stormwater will be designed through the 50-year storm pre-post. Block length we've discussed. Open space, there were two areas identified that were smaller than 1/10 of an acre, and they've been removed from the plans.
Can I stop you for a second on that?
Yes, sir.
And maybe, again, on your open space, if I remember correctly, and I don't know if I tabbed it right, the amenity center, which we have no detail on at this point, includes 6 acres of open space. So that is like guaranteed.
Amenity center will come back through another process, but I believe the 6 acres is identified in this process.
So that means when we see the amenity center detailed, it's going to have 6 acres of dedicated open space because it's in your calculation.
Yeah.
Right? Do I understand it?
Yes.
It doesn't need to be,
It-
because we're not getting the preliminary plat of the open spaces, the preliminary plat of the amenity center now.
They've incorporated that as part of the plan,
Right.
the acreage.
But in other words, there's a little building here and there's
Right.
open space around it. But what they're saying is that obviously the building's not part of the open space, that when they finally submit that, that will have a building and 6 acres of open space. Do I understand that right?
No, the intent is that the entire amenity site area would be 6 acres. And within that 6 acres, there would be an amenity program to include just spitball, pool, tennis, pickleball, any variety of things that would all fit within that 6 acres. But because all of those other buildings and improvements are part of the amenity, they would be part of that open space package. There's an active open space component.
Even the enclosed building?
Yes.
Is that normally correct?
Yeah.
So as long as that site is 6 acres.
Yeah.
In other words, I understand the pickleball courts and the pool, and even though there's sort of structure there, it's open space because it's,
It's rec.
but say the little building that might be just a meeting room, like this room, that's still considered because it's open to the public. Do they live
Yeah.
there?
Yeah.
Is that how it's defined?
So per the code, it says, I'm in the open space standards. Uses of open space may include the following. It's got a list of 13 things. And number 10 says recreational amenities such as a community center, tennis courts, community swimming pools, pickleball, and other similar facilities used in common and made available to the residents for the entire subdivision.
So it'll
I
fall.
interpret that building as part of a community center, if you will, available
Right.
to that.
So
Yeah.
that's the spot there is at least 6 acres. 'Cause I don't know what it is. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yes. And they've modified their plan. I guess my point is to eliminate a couple of areas that were not that were smaller than the 0.11 acres in size, and they also removed sidewalks and so forth from the calculations, and they still were over almost 2 acres over the minimum standard as provided on the plan. Had a recommendation to showing when they go through the permitting process to make sure they're showing how they comply with the parking standards for the single family homes, duplexes, and townhomes, and they've acknowledged they will do that. Provide rationale to remove a few regulated trees there, and they provided some information on that. See, dedicated note if any area be dedicated to public. They're saying roads would be dedicated to Town of Sunset Beach. All other areas will be private. They've confirmed that all roadways are 50 foot with the exception of Road 1, which is 55 feet. They've provided the information on the native pollinator garden. I'm at the open space table on D1. They've reconciled any discrepancies there. General utility note 5, minimum 26 foot wide area. That was actually a little bit of discussion at the TRC, and they got clarification and confirmation from fire department that they did comply with that standard. Arborist reviewing each heritage tree. They're indicating that has not been that will be performed at a later date. Heritage trees proposed removal mitigation. They've said no.
Except for 4710. we talked about.
Potentially 710. The CZ zoning had indicated that preserving trees to the drip line, the heritage tree to the drip line. The codes actually says to the critical root zone. So they had changed the plan to show the drip line versus the critical root zone. The critical root zone actually is likely going to be twice the size of the drip line. So yeah. Zoning conditions was a drip line, so they modified their plan to show the drip line versus the critical root zone. They confirmed that they had shown a lot of regulated trees within multifamily areas and commercial areas, and just because it was part of their tree survey. And I asked them to take it off the plan set just to avoid confusion that they weren't going to be cleared.
So the only ones listed here are in this 3 sections.
Yes, they're just those 3 sections now.
All right, so there's no, in terms of the tree removal for the commercial section. we're not
Correct.
dealing with that.
Multifamily nor commercial. They're only trees being removed right now will be those in phases 1B, phase 2, and phase
Right.
3.
So the
Okay.
total up and the total mitigation, which
Yes.
comes to correct zero balance, whatever you want to call it, is for these 3 sections is
Correct.
correct.
Correct. Let's see. They confirmed the spacing for the street trees. We're going to be 50 feet. They had some comments from the fire department. That I believe they concurred on the first 4 or 5 there. They'll get their fire development permit from Brunswick County. They've agreed that the roadway and turnarounds will be constructed material supporting at least 75,000 pounds. I'm not sure how you do that, Matt, but you confirmed that. Fire department had again conversation about roadway width 26 feet, fire hydrant. Access roads extended within 150 feet of all portions of the exterior wall of the building. This will be addressed in final design and utility permitting for the project. 2 separate and improved fire apparatus access roads are required, and they have the subdivision's been designed for 2 fire apparatus access roads and 1 emergency access road to build out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think on that drawing it was like an arrow to nowhere, right?
Can I ask about that?
Sure.
Because I don't see the connection.
Yeah,
to
it was like
Mayfair.
there was like an arrow. There was a box, and I had to say.
It just says emergency vehicle connection, but I don't.
So it's like off the plan, maybe somewhere. Is that on CS4?
CS3 on the far left side of the page labels the emergency vehicle connection, and the final alignment of that and how it connects back to Road 1 will have to be determined through final design. And but that is the location. And if we're going to update the plans to clean up the verbiage of the multi-use trail,
Right,
we
so-
can certainly provide some additional continuation of that
I was
line
gonna
work.
say, could you just kind of dash it in?
Yeah, we can dash it in.
I
Final
assume
design.
it's just gonna connect over to Road 1. right?
Correct. It'll be kind of a projection.
Oh, I see. So just below that number 71 block, that emergency.
Correct. Yeah. So we
So
we can dash
that-
in that
so-
That's Mayfair.
connection.
So this is Mayfair here, okay? So we need that. I think they spelled it that way. So that road showing there is Mayfair, whatever it is, road or.
Yeah, and it also shows up at the top of CS4 with the page overlap. So yeah, we'll
Right.
dash that in, so it's very clear as to where that'll tie in.
Yeah, so basically follow the arc and then go behind that one lot there. What is that, 852 or something?
Yeah.
Over to the curve of Road 1 there in front of open space 50. I didn't bring my magnifying glass. So it'll just come into there,
Yeah.
right?
50.
This is on CS4?
No, CS3
CS3.
on the right-hand side, and then it flows over to 4 on the top there. So
That
it's showing that
That's
same
Mayfair.
corner lot.
Okay, and this is
the
the
connection will be right there. So
Yeah.
no,
okay. Okay, got it.
I just had a hard time finding it.
Yeah, it was tough. It was on the where the
On
plans.
the edge,
Yeah.
yeah.
To fire department recommendations. I'm sorry, gates shall be installed in accordance with the fire code, and they're acknowledging that the gates will be provided for along the emergency road, installed in accordance with the fire code. They concur that no hydrants will be placed on dead end streets. The water system is going to be looped. Connectivity provided via emergency access connecting to Mayfair Way. And they noted that the fire department is requesting they consider mulch and use of pine straws for landscaping materials.
Is that something you're willing to comply with?
It was more of a request, not a requirement. The fire department has requested it.
Yeah, okay, it's a request. Now I'm asking if you're going to honor the request.
Mulch in lieu of pine straw, Jason, when you put your landscaping in foundation buildings. It's fire departments are typically requesting this now. Somebody's sitting on the porch, they flick a cigarette out or an ash drops and it hits the pine straw and any vinyl siding or whatever.
We
is
had a
pretty
barbecue
combustible.
tip over on the island, right?
Yep.
Yes.
So it's not uncommon for fire departments now requesting that as they're going through a plan review. It's not a code requirement, but it is a request.
You're talking about on the individual
Yeah,
lots? We're not talking
yeah.
about the common areas, but
Yeah, it was a general comment. And I believe Lisa was telling me that the code, she believes the code requires it for multifamily already anyway.
Yeah.
But just,
Got
it's,
it.
and fire department did word it as a consideration.
Got it.
So,
Yeah, I think it's not the practical problem of which material we use up front, but since we sell the home, so many of the homes,
it's,
what happens next?
homeowners will come in and do what they want to with
Right.
it.
If it's not required by code, then how do we? It's not really
It's
a
the
viable.
multifamily is all we can
Multifamily,
regulate.
the
and
amenity
we
center.
regulate against
Right.
pine
We'll
straw.
comply with your code with regard
Yeah.
to landscaping requirements around the multifamily. Absolutely.
And
It-
commercial.
But I think the fire, it's just written as a consideration because they just think about it as you are providing the landscaping, understanding that the homeowner is going to do what they want to with it later.
Yeah, we'll have to take it into account. It's not something we could add to a plat approval anyway, but we'll take the suggestion to heart and see what we can do.
But you could potentially add it to your covenants, maybe.
Yes, sir. Yeah, not something we can answer on the
Not
spot.
asking you to do it, but just something you could consider.
Plus,
Understood.
it'll come up on every TRC review.
Yeah,
So now you can write your,
Right.
be ready
Right.
for it, right?
it may, absolutely. In Brunswick County stormwater, the comments were pretty general. They were outlining what the requirements are and acknowledge that they need to get permits.
Richard?
Can I ask a question about TRC comments?
Sure.
How come the town doesn't send these plans to the town engineer for review? There's a lot of engineering in here, and
Now, I had a list of what previously they've been sent to, so that's who I
Right.
sent it to, so I'm not sure.
I'm not accusing them,
Everyone
just
is.
asking the question. There's a lot of engineering here, and
You have a own
town engineer's not involved.
We don't have a consulting engineer to review plans of
Thought
this
we had
nature.
somebody on retainer.
We do, but not for this specific
project management.
project. Or he's a project management engineer consultant, not a preliminary plat subdivision engineer.
Is that something we ought to consider?
We can consider it if the council desires for that
That'd be
level
a-
of
That would be a
review.
council.
It would be,
So I'm sure I have to establish a budget for the
right,
additional
because it
service.
would be a budget consideration.
So we did send plans to DOT and various other groups, but these are the comments that I've received in writing.
Okay.
Yeah, well, procedurally, which obviously time permitting is always the issue, is obviously under our current rules, one planning board member can attend a TRC meeting as an observer. I guess maybe what we need to tighten up is getting the comments and then the responses back to the whole planning board with the packet,
Yeah, and that was my mistake, and I'm acknowledging that.
because then obviously they could have read the
Mhm.
original comments and then see from Cape Fear Engineering their responses. And I guess what
Absolutely.
the hole in that is, if another technical comment didn't make it, then there's only choices to bring it up here, I guess. There's no way to say, well, so
Mhm.
I guess process wise.
But if you believe that somebody on this board is more qualified to be the person to attend the TRC, then you can make that change.
Right. Well, generally I do, and if I'm not around, I certainly can, but I guess I can pass it permanently to anybody if they want to attend.
You
I've
can.
just been doing it because I've been available and I'm doing it, but if I wasn't available, what I would have probably done is ask the rest of the board who can sit in for me, either Jerry as vice or Stewart is probably more, but I'm allowed to do that. So procedurally, I guess, process-wise, the optimal solution would be obviously get the forms out to all the TRC people. I mean, some didn't respond.
The forms were provided to each one.
Right. So, I mean, staff can probably internally say, well, you guys need to respond by X date in writing, even if the thing says no comment, maybe.
Yeah, and I did get no comments from the police department, but I didn't include it with your
Yeah,
packet
but
because
you
I
got
got
them
no
all
comments.
orally only, if I remember correctly, so.
Well, I asked him to. I asked. You're right. He was here, but I asked him
Yeah.
to send me
So
something,
that
and he
we
did
have
send
the
no
form
comments.
He
saying-
sent you a blank
He
paper.
did.
Yeah, but even if they say police department has no comment, fine, then you,
Yeah.
at the end, you package that up and
Right.
distribute it with the packet. So,
Yeah, sure. No, that's. I didn't realize that you guys got them in the past, and
No,
I
well,
overlooked that in the code.
we didn't actually get anything in the past.
Okay.
This observer was added recently, so this is kind of like a process in development.
Yeah.
To kind of smooth out. Obviously, time constraints are always there, but if we don't try to get, ask to get it done, it won't get done. So if we can maybe tighten that up, be
Yes,
helpful. Not-
absolutely.
we're kind of wasting their time now, but so that we can have maybe less of some of these questions answered, because we've seen the TRC comment, we've seen the response, okay, it's a
Mhm.
closed file on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And lesson learned, we'll certainly do better with the next
Right.
packet. And actually, I appreciate the applicant even working with a compressed timeline on my end, because I was delinquent on the the completeness review. So I had a death in the family, and I was not able to review the plan. So we actually held the TRC meeting only 2 weeks ago. And normally I would have liked to have had it a week or two earlier to provide them additional time to
Okay.
respond to the
So
comments.
to move on, anyone have specific copies on items and their answers on TRC stuff? We all good on that, Jerry?
Yeah.
Okay. The next, I guess, would be,
Now, do we need to deal with a housekeeping issue? It's 11 o'clock. We usually,
there's no rules on time for the general meetings.
okay, good. All right.
Okay. So, but to move things along, I guess, is I was going to have just go to the floor, maybe start with Jerry, skip me, go to this end to see any other questions or comments, and then I'll kind of wrap up in the end before. So, Jerry, anything else that we haven't touched on
The
that's a concern or question?
the annexation is the only issue that they moved up the annexation
Yeah,
to. I saw that someplace and I can't
Yeah.
recall.
Council's approved the annexation ordinance. I believe it goes effect June 30th of 2025.
2025.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
I'm sorry. So the annexation
Annexation
has been.
is
Council has approved the annexation ordinance, so they petitioned to be annexed, and council adopted, it was in August maybe, adopted the ordinance with an effective date of annexation, June 30th of 2025.
which is a
So
far
the
product.
property has been annexed.
Yes, sir.
The ordinance been approved, officially becomes in the town in June 30th of 2025.
Oh,
It is
so June 30th,
Versus-
2025.
versus a 30-month.
Right.
annexation is irrevocable. It takes effect next June 30th.
Okay.
All right.
Welcome to Sunset Beach.
Thank you.
So,
That's the only question I have. I was
Stuart?
You want to go? You want me to go?
No, you go ahead.
What about the TIA? I mean, we didn't get the TIA at the zoning time. I would have thought the TIA would have come in now with the subdivision plan. Or does the TIA not, we never get to see the TIA? Is that?
if it ain't done,
It's not finalized. My understanding it's been submitted, being reviewed by DOT. I haven't gotten any comments from the department.
Yes, the TIA process is underway with Kimley Horn, the traffic engineer. They've had several rounds of back and forth with DOT. Unfortunately, there were some DOT staff changes that have made that process longer than I think any of us would have liked, but we're moving forward with the TIA, all the traffic counts. It's just not, as Ron said, been finalized to a point where it can be provided at this time.
right, so to our,
When you,
earlier discussion, this is our rules now, we discussed changing it. Item 1 was timing, but council said don't bother, so whenever the TIA gets done, it gets done. We'll never see it. So,
Okay.
all-
Do you have any insight as to when your expectation of when it will be done that you can provide us?
I do not at this time. I'm certainly happy to get an update from the traffic engineer and share that with Ron
That would be
as soon as
great.
we get something. Yeah.
Okay.
When I get it, I can make it available.
That'd be great.
Let you know that it's in.
All right. So just a couple of questions on CS1. where we've got the open spaces that back up to the buffer area along Old Georgetown Road. So what's going to happen in those open spaces? Or do they just stay natural, or?
I think the intent is to preserve the existing vegetation as much as practical. Obviously, if there's
There weren't many.
vegetation that's unsightly, would be removed and possibly supplemented. But at this point, the intention is to leave the existing vegetation and supplement it where needed, just to improve the aesthetics. But there's not a detailed landscape plan or design for those areas at this point.
Okay. So would that detail come up at the construction drawing level?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, with the final construction site landscaping plans, yes.
And that's in addition to the buffer, correct?
Which we will not see.
Right. So in theory, some of those live oaks, if 710 doesn't make it, some of those live oaks could go back in those open space areas, right?
Yes, that would seem like a logical place to provide the plantings if needed. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Because
And
then,
that, I'm
at
sorry.
least then they're still in the same phase,
Yeah, sure. And that open space is in addition to the buffer, correct?
That is correct. Yeah,
That's
there's
right.
they abut each other. They do not overlap.
Yeah.
All right. Mail kiosk locations. Have y'all thought about that? Or I mean, you're going to have to do mail kiosks everywhere. But with sidewalk only on one side of the streets, if you put the mail kiosk on the other side, aren't they going to hit you with handicap parking and stuff like that for the mail kiosk? Because you have to provide handicap access to them.
With mail kiosks, we work with the postmaster, and there's a layout that they want to see access wise and everything. So we lay those out intelligently throughout the community. We do different things depending on the amenity as well. A lot of times we'll incorporate them into the amenity, which has yet been established with just establishing the amenity site specific area. So we'll come back to revisit that. But typically we're doing cluster mailboxes around the community.
Okay, just a whole series of them around the community, right? They wouldn't have to go to the rec site to get a gang box or something like that.
Correct.
Now, if that's inserted in an open space area, does that change the definition of the open space?
I don't know. Ron, would that change? Are they allowed in open space?
You're talking about a cluster mailbox. That's about a 5 foot by 5 foot area that comes up to service
But then if you
30
have to,
homes at a time.
But then you
It's
got to
not
add
anything.
parking.
if you have a handicapped parking space with it,
You don't actually have to add handicap parking to those areas.
Okay.
You can have them, pull up areas. A lot of people, we locate them in such a way that they're servicing maybe 20 to 30 homes. So a lot of people are walking to their mailbox.
Okay. Sorry, sir. Go ahead.
let's see, on sheet L7, just had a question about in the calculation about the tree mitigation summary. There's an item that has got the heritage trees to remain, proposed street trees, the credit for that, and then it says tree save area, perimeter, and stormwater buffers. So there's no regulated trees in there. You just get tree credit for the area.
So the condition
Just curious how that works.
was that any tree larger than 4 inches that was not considered regulated that we were able to save could count toward our mitigation requirement.
Right.
With the logic being, if we have to make 5,000 trees, we have to have space to plant 5,000 trees.
Right.
And the only way to create that space in many instances would be to remove existing established vegetation to create new landscaped areas. So
Well, on this line, maybe these are trees over 4 inches in a tree save area, not an area. So in the perimeter and stormwater buffers, there is 2,348 inches of trees over 4 inches.
Yes, we
That's
can
what that
we can
means.
clarify that note to be more consistent with the
Right.
language of the condition, so it's clear. Yes,
Right.
So you've already,
You've
Taking
surveyed
these-
those trees. so-
we've done a timber cruise and feel that we have easily that amount of trees that we have the potential to save.
Right.
The
Okay.
final numbers and which one's going to be dictated by final design and grading, and where the
Grading, right.
all that. But no, we've
So you-
looked at it and think that that's a very conservative number of the trees that exist out there, larger than 4 inches, that we'll be able to preserve. Yes, sir.
Right. I get it. So yeah, it's trees in that area, not area. It's
Yes.
inches of trees.
So yeah,
in-
as we make
inches
the
of
other
trees
few,
over 4 inches that are in those areas.
yes, we make the other few little plan cleanup things. We can provide some additional language so it ties directly to that condition
I
that was
get it.
agreed upon.
I get it.
while you're up there,
They always want to escape back to the chair pretty quick.
no.
You notice that?
I didn't see any easements shown on, water, sewer, storm drainage.
So the intention is for the storm drain where it crosses between lots to be located in a common area versus a recorded easement as much as possible. So you don't have storm drain running on someone's property, and then you have the issue with landscaping and fences and things. The intention is to provide common areas between the lots as depicted on the plans. And then any other utilities would be routed through common areas around ponds.
So like SW2, between roads 13 and 12, you've got some storm drainage running along the back of those lots. So there's no
SW2.
SW2. So, and this may be a Lisa question too, is that storm drainage between Road 12 and Road 13, is that public storm drainage? Is that town maintained storm drainage? I mean, we're gonna maintain everything in the right of way, obviously.
Yes, that would be my understanding, is that the right-of-way drainage would be part of the dedication to the town, but any
Right.
other drainage located in common areas, in blanket easements along the rear of lots, would be part of the homeowners association's responsibility as part of their master stormwater permit.
Does that sound right, Lisa?
Sorry, say that again.
So that as part of the roadway dedication to the town, the drainage within the right-of-way would become town maintained.
Correct.
And any other storm drainage outside the right of way, around the stormwater ponds, in common areas, through any lot line easements, would be the responsibility of the homeowners association as part of their master stormwater permit.
Correct.
So there would be a delineation of drainage responsibility at the right of way line.
That is correct.
Right. So
But it
look,
would
so
be the
looking at these pictures, these red lines that occur between like Road 12 and 13 that are just along the back of these lots, those are the homeowner association responsibility.
Yes, that would be
But
typical.
you'll need to
yeah.
put a easement or something.
Yeah,
on
and I
those.
see the pipes that you're referring to now. And typically, when we will do a final plat, there will be some blanket drainage easements reserved along side and rear lot lines, and those typically are not shown graphically, but handled in a blanket note.
So you would
And
say
that-
there's a 5 foot on each
5
side.
foot
of
on
the
either
pipe
side,
is,
yes.
is considered a utility easement.
yeah,
It's on their deed.
blanket drainage easement. Yes.
So it would be the responsibility of the HOA, not the homeowner.
Mm,
If you're talking about infrastructure being pipes, as he's mentioning, then yes, what we do with our governing documents with the HOA, if it's for access purposes or if they have a drainage swale in their backyard, they'll have a drainage easement that the homeowner would then have to maintain, take care of mowing it. It's on their property. If it's infrastructure, as he's pointing out, that's an easement that gets recorded, and the state requirement is to also, require those easements for access to the ponds or any infrastructure he's pointing out.
So there can be conditions in this where the homeowner would be responsible for it as opposed to
Not-
the HOA.
Not infrastructure like pipe or concrete. It would be just like a vegetated swale to maintain.
Vegetated swale, yes.
Okay.
Which I'm just
Surface
pointing out
items.
this is how communities are set up all over.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
set up the same exact way, and so
Mhm.
Okay. And then I assume all the water and sewer stuff will have easements on it, but that goes to the county, right? Those-
Correct. Yeah, the water and sewer are going to be located within the public right of way. There may be some areas that it may run through a common element once we look at the final, design.
Right.
Any of those areas where it leaves the right of way would have a mapped easement, and then offered up for deed and dedication back to Brunswick County through their deed of dedication process. And they'll specifically refer to a recorded map book and page that depicts the right of ways and any required easements.
Okay. All right. Oh, don't go anywhere. All right. So I have to talk about roadways for a minute. And I appreciate that y'all did a lot of redesign and changed a lot of things around and improved the intersections. There's still a couple of spots that I wanted to ask you about. Like the intersection of Road 11
We're on PR.
and
No,
Road
RW.
13. We're on RW2.
Which two roads again? I'm sorry.
11 and 13.
Hmm.
So at the end of 13, where it comes into Road 11, in the middle of that curve, someone coming to the end of Road 13 and wanting to make a turn onto Road 11, the sight distance is going to be severely constrained looking to the left. And my old rule of thumb was 10 times the speed limit. So that'd be 200 feet. You'd have to have that cleared out. Looking back, looked up a Federal Highway Administration.
You're talking about this site triangle in here?
No, I'm talking about this person right here trying to look to the left.
Because that curve is there. I
Yeah.
see what you're at.
Just worried about safety. Not saying you can't do it, but just worried about safety.
So you're at the upper right-hand corner where that 68 degrees is.
Yep, right. I mean, you're less than 90, you're more than 60, but that intersection stop sight distance, I'm just concerned. Typically, you'd have a sight easement that goes back that 200 feet. I don't have anything to scale with, so
Yeah, I think if you look at the roadway stationing, the intersection is approximately station 3500. And so you can see back to where that station 33 would be,
Mhm. Right,
just to give you a sense of scale at the 200 feet.
right. So if you had a side easement line cutting across that corner, right? And if you did that, what that impacts is street trees and landscaping and other things that are in there. But I'd rather see that area preserved. If you want to keep the intersection like you got it, I'd rather see some kind of a site easement in there.
Yeah, where would that occur and what's the drawing for that?
Yeah, and I think if you
That's
look
in
at
L2.
sheet L-2, at that same intersection on the landscape plan, the site triangles that were considered for placement of the street trees around the intersections was as defined in the UDO, which is significantly less than the 200 feet that you're referring to. But I certainly see the concern, and it may be that with just a manipulation and adjustment of the street trees in that area, it could free up the visibility at that location.
Well, two, and that's open space. So it's going to the HOA. So 10 years down the road, they could come in there and do a bunch of plantings and block that. So it might be better if there was some kind of a site easement that restricted, plantings in that area. I don't know. It's just, y'all have a subdivision that's marketed towards older or retired folks, and a lot of us can't turn very well. Necks don't work as well as you young bucks. So
If you made that a three-way stop, that mitigate the.
I think you could do.
I think it would help mitigate it, but I think it would be an awkward intersection.
mm-hmm.
So the concerns noted, and we'll certainly look to and have discussions about what can be done in that area through a final design process. Are there other areas that jump out at you, Mr. Jones?
Well, in the same area, Road 11, where it 14 and 15 intersect up close to, I guess, up to the north side. Again, the same kind of thing. You've got, especially if I'm coming up Road 14 and I want to turn left onto Road 11, again, the sight distance might be an issue.
Because you have a private household there too. I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah. and
there's a little strip of open space.
Yeah,
in
there's
there.
there's an open space parcel there. And again, the site triangles that were utilized for the tree spacing were as defined
Right.
in the UDO.
I guess part of this, is for the town's perspective, these are going to be town streets. And so what happens if there is a collision there and somebody comes back and says, well, this intersection's not safe, and now the town's got to go in and do something years after. Now the town's spending money to potentially solve that or cut down trees or, something like that. If there is an easement, then the town could come in and cut the trees if they're on open space and people have a fit. You can't cut the trees down or clear that area out. I'm just trying to think down the road, what kind of issues could the town get into maintenance-wise and liability-wise?
And I guess too, if they aren't maintained or if there are visibility issues, the town could also send violation letters to the HOA or whoever owns those properties to make sure that it's properly maintained as well.
Yeah,
It gets a little sticky then. But
only if there's like an easement, dedicated easement there. If it's just blanket open space, I don't know how you could get them for a violation if they're just planting in open space.
Because the other issue is
Still have
going to
to
be for a driver that's in a car, and we have this problem in Sea Trail, even in private households. If you put an oleander plant or something on a corner, that effectively blocks visibility in terms of making a left-hand turn. So it's not just trees; it could be
Shrubberies.
shrub.
Right, but I think the key thing that Stuart, if I'm right, if it's a dedicated site, dedicated easement for site clearance, then the town can come in and clear it, and
Right.
without question, right?
Without question. Right.
Right.
Right. If somebody plants a bush there, and obviously when the bush is little, nobody notices.
Right.
Grows up, it's suddenly it's a site plan, and they call up the town and say, "I can't see on this left turn." You can send out the town people to take the bush down or replace it with a little teeny bush or whatever you decide to do, and we're not hung up there. So
So the rights of way are 50 feet wide that will be dedicated to the town. The pavement is between 24 and 26 feet wide. You're talking about a 10-foot shoulder that's within the land that you have the ability to maintain however you see fit, including how the landscaping is managed. That's not to suggest that it's not possible for someone 12 feet off of the pavement to still create some sort of visual obstruction or the like, but
Right,
it should provide a significant buffer to address the concern that you're describing.
Well, I don't know that we can enforce anything at this stage, but I'd just like it on the record that I noted that I feel like there's some safety issues. And when you do the construction drawings, you could either modify these intersections or add the easements. I think that would be doing your best due diligence.
Well, the
That's safe.
dedicated
Good note.
easement's going to be 50-foot wide already. Then they've sufficed that.
No, he's talking about a
A
site client's
sight
site
line easement.
easement in the open space.
So according to the Federal Highway Administration, at that intersection with 11 and 13, you have to have a sight line of 280 feet back down the road. So when you start connecting that up, it eats up a third of that open space on that corner.
So I'd offer two things in response. One, in my years of arguing about easements, sightline easements are the worst to
I agree.
dispute because there's such a subjective question about what it means, who's entitled to what sort of view line. And two, you probably noticed, but it's worth pointing out that the speed limit here is lower than it would be under ordinary circumstances already. That's incorporated into the traffic plan and the zoning conditions, which also provides some comfort with regard to the manner in which people approach intersections.
I understand, but the numbers I was giving out are based on the design speed. So
Yep.
yeah, they change depending on the speed limit.
They do, that's right, but they are objectively lower than average would be.
Right.
And therefore, the concept of seeing an interchange before you approach it, you have a little bit more cushion there with a slower speed. I don't think we can incorporate anything into the preliminary plat at this stage to address that concern, provided that we're satisfying the code and
Yeah,
doing what we're
The
obligated to
easement's
do.
not a requirement. Way I'm interpreting the code, there's a definition of site visibility triangle, which is what we're talking about. And it's basically saying when you have a corner of road intersections, unobstructed visibility shall be maintained at elevation between 3 and 7 feet of the center line pavement level within an area required by the regulation adopted by the Department of Transportation, North Carolina subdivision roads minimum construction standards, May of 1983, or amendments. There's an illustration beside of it, and it's got 25 and 25 feet measured. So that's what I was trying to get at a minute ago, was if the town finds that trees or something is blocking that sight distance, it's a site visibility triangle, then I believe the zoning, that becomes in a zoning matter and can be a zoning enforcement measure if there are anything, if the town finds anything deficient there.
And if it's not a lot, if it's common area, that's not dead space. It's land that's owned by the HOA.
Right.
HOA is just as accountable to comply
Exactly.
with the zoning code as a private landowner
Exactly.
would be. Another private landowner.
Now, in terms of that area, those homes are designated as townhomes?
No, single family. Huh?
Along Road 10 there.
Yeah.
Along Road 10, those are single family. Now, there are townhomes along roads 14 and 15, and possibly the best spot to see where the townhomes are planned is sheet CS0, maybe 3 or 4 into the set. The townhome areas have been highlighted in green.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what's trying to figure out what's. Everybody's going to probably trying to get down to Road 4, right? To get out. Road 4 to Road 1. So if
That or possibly
if you're-
Road
if you're-
10 to the circle to Road 1.
No, that way. I'm just trying to. Yeah, so you could have lefts out of there.
Well,
Well, I guess we can't. I don't know. Apparently, there's nothing we can do. So round 2, what? Other than
But
asking, I mean, it is what it is, I guess.
yeah, the code requires them to be maintained.
Right, and we can't make them do a sightline easement if they choose to do so
Yeah.
because they think it's a good idea. They can. And
Well, before we get off of that subject, On RW3, the intersection of Road 22 and Road 21, down at the bottom of the page, has showing a 53-degree angle. That does not meet code.
Yeah, and I think that this was just an error in our cleanup of the drawings. If we look at the way that Road 22, that center line alignment just continues straight, there should be a slight curve to that to follow the true center line of the road, and then that angle is updated greater than 60. That's just a error in us catching that through our final review.
So that's not a 53? What's the correct number?
Greater than 60. So that center line depicted along Road 22 is an error. Instead of continuing as a straight line, it should curve back more perpendicular to Road 21.
Towards.
They're on the southern side.
Good, and that'll improve that sight distance
Yes.
at that intersection.
Yeah. And instead of that center line, following the true center line of the road, it was just projected out to that intersection. So that's something we can certainly update when we do the other few things we've already discussed.
In terms of this issue with that we were on before, in Road 11 and Road 15, Road 14, if you relocated that last town home to another location, opened up more space on that, is that a potential solution, or is that not a potential solution?
I think it's hard to say at this point without doing a more detailed analysis of the trickle down implications. If
Well,
that would be
you've got
feasible or
additional
not.
townhome inventory available to you in terms of your future development. I mean, I just throw it out there as a potential, because now you'd have more open space that could be mitigated to create sightlines.
It's really up to them to figure out how to fix their own problems.
Well, I get what.
Okay.
So I think what stewards get to, because they've been eventually dedicated to the town. At some point, it becomes town.
I'm not addressing Stewart.
Oh. Yep. Okay. Anything else, Stuart?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I guess I can't do anything about this either, but the two roundabouts that you got shown, are they intended to be roundabouts?
They are intended to be roundabouts, yes, sir.
Okay, so sorry, but I used to teach classes on roundabouts, but these aren't really true roundabouts. There's a intersection like this with intersecting perpendicular or radial intersection roads at the Food Lion up here, and people come up to it all the time and turn left.
Yeah.
And so, again, with an elderly population, I think they'd work a lot better if they were real roundabouts. So the approach angles are tangential instead of radial to the center. And then you've got a little bit of striping there. Basically, what you're trying to do is encourage people to turn right and not allow them to turn left. And I see it all the time up here at the Food Lion.
Yeah.
People come up to the intersection, they turn left, even though there's signs saying no left turn. They come up, they see it as a perpendicular intersection, and they turn left.
I think that with a center concrete island, concrete pork chop, there's a way to make those more functional and safe.
Yeah, even
as
if
part of
you
the final design. Yeah.
So try to blend in, it not as 90 degree to the arc, more
Right.
of a blended into the arc, right? Is what you're
Right.
saying?
Yeah, so the approach angle comes in to the angle of the path, not perpendicular to the center.
And where you got open space around it, it can obviously be done.
Yeah, it looks like both of them have open space around them.
Open
so-
space, and they've got right of way area. So certainly we'll consider that as part of the design. I
Right.
think it's a very
Basically
valid.
starting the right turn before you get to the circle.
Right.
right? You're starting to,
And you're making the left turn harder.
right, so you got to go back
Um,
obtuse or
We'll make
whatever.
it feel like it's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. All right. That's all I had for you. I have one question for Lisa though. Is there a town-wide speed limit? Like if a road's not posted, a lot of towns have a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit.
All the towns are posted in one way or another. Some roads are 20, some are 25, some are 35. They're all dictated in the general code.
Okay.
And we are trying to come up with a uniform community-wide speed limit sign to eliminate some of the plethora of speed limit signs that are everywhere. So we are in the process of doing that, but they should be outlined in general code under the parking.
So them
Biggest traffic.
changing to a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit's not going to cause the town to generate a whole lot of different signs.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
And sorry, I don't know what speed limits you are proposing.
20 and 25.
Okay, well then we're perfect because we order those by the bushel baskets.
And those will be NCDOT signs?
They are
The-
town signs.
Yeah, there'll be town signs provided by the town. Be
That is correct.
consistent with the town standards,
But
yes.
because we had this issue with Citro. Citro provided, and they had absolutely no standing until they were swapped out.
When they were designated as town roads, then the signs had to be changed to NCDOT regulated signs.
Right.
One thing I will mention to you, if you were going to look at doing decorative posts for your signs, we do allow that on your dime, and we provide the signs for you, and then we will enter into a mutual agreement of maintenance for those posts. There you go.
All right. I do have one other issue. Maybe a Ron question. I don't know. On the street cross section, they've got a 5-foot planting strip, right? Behind the curb, they have a 5-foot planting strip. First
This
thing
is
is,
D1, right?
yeah, I thought it was required to be 6, but I don't really care. But if they're going to put a tree, so they're going to center a live oak tree in that 5 feet, right? So in 20 years, that live oak tree is going to have a trunk of 20 inches or something like that. And we're only talking about the back of curb to the edge of the bark being 18 inches. I just don't know. I mean, these trees are giant.
Oh,
I mean, a live oak can get to be 80 feet high.
is most of them not live oaks though, right? They're the undercup. Oh, what is-
Overcup.
Overcup oak?
They only get to 60 feet high. I'm just wondering, are we doing the right thing? Is the town going to be, have a problem with maintaining these? I mean, the town's going to have to maintain all these street trees, so all the branches, all the leaves, everything that's coming down. But once these trees get really big, I mean, they're going to interfere with water, sewer, cable, gas. I've never seen a street tree that's that big. Usually they're decorative, a dogwood or.
We have a list of canopy trees, right? That's on the allowed list?
Yeah, they're on the allowed list. I'm just wondering, are we doing the right thing? I guess is
So that's a future question.
right.
So not necessarily related to this, but do we want to look at that a little bit closer?
Well, it's a question for now too,
Right.
because I understand they're meeting the code, but are we doing the right thing?
I didn't check the planting strip width. Are we safe to assume the 5 foot is correct? I didn't check it.
I thought it had to be 6.
Subdivision code does say 6 feet.
Has that been altered someplace by condition?
My recollection is that when going through this, there was a discrepancy between two separate parts of the code, and that 5 foot is what's been shown for a while. I don't know if it was maybe in the road standards or the landscaping standards, but I do recall there being a discrepancy in there.
Well, there's also, I mean, we require street trees, but we also have a street yard that's in the code. That's in the first 10 feet of the lots. I mean, is there a way to push these trees back into the street yard instead of? I'm just wondering about having a.
I don't think we have street yards in this case, right? We don't have parkways. Between the end of the property line and the street, the property lines go to the street right away, right?
Property lines go to the street right away.
We don't have what I used to call a parkway, municipal area between the street and the lot line.
Yeah, typically the planting strip stores, as you're indicating, between the back of curb and the sidewalk.
Right.
And then the curb and the sidewalk is along the property line on the
Right.
right of way side, and then you have the property.
Yeah.
And that's typically where any required street yard is on the property.
Yeah.
Is there any way to get clarity on that planting strip?
Yeah, I'm
Good.
looking now.
And over the years, what municipalities found is that the smaller the tree in the right of way, the better, because it conflicted with cable lines, gas lines, everything else. And I'm just worried about town's future maintenance of those gigantic trees that close. I mean, you're talking 18 inches off the back of curb. It's not going to take much for somebody to run off the road and hit one of those trees. The tree's not going to give.
Hopefully at 20 mile an hour, they'll be okay.
They'll be okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It may be something that the planning board needs to look at, that we dictate what type of trees are specifically put into those areas.
So you guys were using the trees to get to that offset mitigation number, right? So
Well, they could have used any tree in the list.
Yeah, I think the intent was to provide the street trees at 50-foot spacing in a dedicated landscape strip with species per the, ordinance for compliance.
And just for your knowledge, we are looking to achieve Tree City USA status. And one of the requirements is to develop a tree board. And maybe that tree board would be able to help with this issue, and in conjunction with the planning board, to address the future of what our streets are going to look like and what type of trees should be planted in them.
Okay.
this seems like a problem, a future problem. I wish we could do something different. It seems like they're spending an awful lot of money to create the problem.
Yeah, but our subdivision code requires the street trees, and it allows the canopy trees, one every 50 feet, or the smaller trees, one every 20 feet. Particularly my understanding or observation over the years, when you have the smaller trees at 20-foot intervals, so a lot of times they start conflicting with driveway placements of these smaller lots or the narrower lots. So developers a lot of times will choose the larger tree, the canopy tree, because 50 foot on center, they have a better opportunity to plan where those tree placement will be, along with their driveway placement. That said, though, I understand what you're thinking about on as far as once the trees mature, is it creating town issues for the town at a later time? So maybe it is also, like you're talking about, looking at what trees are allowed as that canopy tree to satisfy that canopy tree requirement. That isn't going to be a problem later down the road for the town to maintain not just the trees, but you're looking at sidewalks and curb and gutter and
Oh yeah,
potential
it's going to
utilities and everything else.
It's going to tear up the road. Not to mention the sidewalk. But I mean, you're only a couple of feet off the back of curb. It's going to tear the curb off. I mean, there's
And
places in Raleigh that have tried that. and those trees have destroyed the roads. And it's not like we have one road with 10 trees on it.
Right.
We've got 30 some odd streets with 1,000 trees on it. This could be a big issue. How would you guys feel about having the trees not in the right of way, but maybe right behind the sidewalk? I mean, from a aesthetic standpoint, I don't want to get into the building envelope or whatever, but the trees might have a better chance of living if they're not right there on the road.
We need to circle up. I understand your concerns and everything, but it's really what we've been directed to do this entire process, is place those street trees in that location. So for right now, without evaluating what we're going to do with each individual lot, the spacing may have to change, right? Because you may not be able to get that 50 feet
Right.
every 50 feet. I mean, there's some other variables that would come into play without looking at it with a fine tooth comb. I can't answer that question, but
Y'all be open to looking at that as a
What
option?
about a different pick on the tree? Is there a better selection? I mean, other than this overcup oak tree.
They're bound by whatever the UDO and the CD is saying
Yeah,
now.
but
So we can't
because-
really
But they're
request
not
them to make
forced on
changes
using
to
that.
that.
No, they're not. They can pick from the list, of which one of them is the overcup oak. Forget its real name. But there are other picks.
yeah, if you
And that's
have
their
something-
choice.
Yeah, if you have something that's less invasive, we
I
can.
mean, the live
definitely
oaks you
look
have
into
to
it.
because they're mitigating other live
We have the
oaks.
same concerns as you in years. You know, we don't want our sidewalks to get uprooted by roots of trees and things
Right.
of that nature. So I understand the concern.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if there's a smaller, cheaper tree that
Yeah.
would achieve the same
Where's
idea
Where does
without-
our list occur?
without causing us future problems. And in the meantime, I'm just thinking too, when you plant that tree initially, it's 14 feet high. It's probably 6 feet wide, right? At the bottom of, when you plant it, it's probably 6 feet wide. So that 3 feet that it's initially when it's planted is already in the road.
Yeah.
It's already over the sidewalk. So when the delivery trucks go by, they're going to be hitting the branches.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. I feel like I feel like we're spending a lot of money, of your money, that I feel like we could do a better
Okay. Yeah, understood. We'll-
job.
we'll go to do the
Well,
landscape
did I
plan,
hear
look for
correctly?
more
I mean,
less
is there an
invasive
option
species.
where it's part of the lot to the homeowner, that tree abatement could occur on the lot rather than on the easement?
I don't think we can do that and comply with your code.
Well, again, on table 3.5, right? If I let me, Ron or Lisa, correct me. Table 3.5 is the canopy tree species that you can use.
Okay.
Where currently you're showing overcup oaks, but where you're not mitigating a live oak, you're stuck to mitigating with live oaks up to 50% of them or something. That I understand that you have to do, and you're doing it.
Yes, sir.
But where you've chose from this list of 12 or whatever it is species, you chose the overcup oak, and we're showing that to be, up to 60 feet high with a 50 feet spread. Is there other choices on here that may be in some cases, maybe a less costly one for you, that then provides the same streetscape lamp? I'm not a tree expert. I mean, I know what a southern magnolia is. Are there other ones on this list that would be a choice that won't disrupt the sidewalk and where you're at, not moving them, would be a better species choice out of this table?
Perhaps. So let me ask a question of staff. The designation of the tree species on the preliminary plat, is that binding? That is, if we wanted to plant something other than an overcup oak that was also also qualified as a canopy tree, would we have to revise the plat to?
It would be advisable to have the plat to reflect what's going to be constructed, so when we go out and do an inspection, we know what we're looking at.
Yeah.
But I believe as long as you're showing compliance with the code, I don't think it would have to come back to this process.
Right.
Hey,
So
we
it
want to
could
just-
revise
better?
our landscaping plan to show, to
Yeah.
replace red oak with, or live oak with
Yeah.
this, or this type of tree.
River
So it
birch.
could say canopy tree per table 3.5.
Yes.
Right.
And then we could later on a landscape plan identify the specific type of canopy tree.
Yes,
So this is something that could happen between the preliminary plat and final.
yes.
Right.
That's
Because
what
right
I'm
now
saying.
you're showing the circle with the star, I guess, or dot in the middle as overcup oak tree,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe replace that language with any acceptable canopy tree from table 3.5. So I'm sure the people inspecting would kind of like to know what
Yeah.
they are, but or change that and give a couple choices maybe if you can't get
Yeah.
nail it down right away.
I've seen exactly what you're talking about on a previous preliminary plat when I was just trying to do some research. What I don't know is what did the previous code say and require of submittal versus the newer code, because I'm only familiar with the newer code.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I will also say it was confusing going out in the field, trying to do the inspection and trying to figure out what tree you actually said you were going to plant
Do you have
versus
compliance? Sure.
compliance.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think for approval's sake, for this, you can show canopy tree, but before you construct and install, we would like to know what species you're going to include, or going to actually install.
Okay. So by the same token, if we left the plat as it is with the trees that are designated that comply with the code and the conditional zoning, and we later wanted to propose a different canopy tree, could we achieve that change without the need for a new preliminary plat or revised preliminary plat?
I think you can actually just submit a page or to whichever pages or whatever, or you need to, and we would not have to come back through this process.
Let's go with that approach. So I mean the intent here was obviously to comply with the code
Absolutely.
and to do so in an attractive way. And what we thought was your direction or the town's wish that we have similar looking trees that would create a nice canopy and streetscape. Mr. Jones, I appreciate your notes. We can't answer that on the fly. Is there a better
know.
canopy tree? But we'll study it and we'll take your suggestion to heart. We'll see what we can come up with if it makes sense to do something else. As Tim said, we're just as interested in you are as not having buckling pavement and sidewalks and having trees that survive. So,
Right.
And a diversity of tree, I think, is important as well. You don't want all same type of tree in case
Right.
something
I'm
happens.
beyond my reach
Yeah.
with that level of expertise for an arborist, but I appreciate your point.
Because if
That,
you get
that makes
above, then
sense.
they're all dead, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how to address this and that.
No, I don't think we.
Our intent is from the planning board to say they can choose any tree in the
From that
acceptable
list.
canopy tree table and are suggesting that maybe some diversity other than the what do they
Correct.
call it? Overcup oak might be a sensible thing to do.
We're going to take that comment to
Right.
heart, but logistically, we're going to not revise the plat today to that end because we don't know the answer.
All right, that's all I had. Richard, you're on.
Yeah, I get, and this tree issue that got brought up, I'm always a little mystified as to there are developments within Sunset Beach where trees were preserved on lots and homes built within the confines. I live in Sugar Sands. I've got a red oak. I've got a loblolly pine on the lot that's been there for probably, well, the red oak's probably been there for 100 years. And I guess I'm curious, the ambience that creates is a very lovely, verdant, wooded neighborhood, as opposed to we're building houses, we're going to level all the trees and then replace them with trees along the sidewalk. And that majority of, and I don't see any way the planning board can, I mean, there's nothing in the UDO that encourages that kind of practice. I'm just curious as to why, and maybe you are planning to try and preserve trees on existing single-family lots. I mean, is that in your plan, or And that may be a tough question to answer. I'm sorry, it's kind of on the
I mean,
fly.
I think, yes, the intent is to preserve on-lot vegetation where practical.
Okay.
At this point in the design, without knowing all of the final road grades and lot grading required for drainage,
Got it.
we have strategically shown in the plans that those trees would be removed so
Right.
that there's no surprises down the road. But I think it's everybody's hope that some of those trees that are shown in red will in fact be able to be saved and provide additional aesthetic value to those lots. But we didn't want to come into this plan saying that we can keep these and then a final design say, well, based on the grading, we're gonna have to either provide, too much cut or too much fill, and that tree's not gonna make it.
Yeah, that's great because, in the best of all possible worlds, I mean, the community sentiment that we get is developers come in here, they cut down all the trees, and now it ruins the ambience of Sunset Beach. So I encourage you, and it sounds like that's within in what your intentions are, and I look forward to seeing how it turns out. It's been privately communicated to me that there are some discussions going on about Angel Trace Road. Have there's been any progress on that? And is there any, have you guys, I know you don't own any a portion of that road, but the other big issue that's going to come up is at the end of this 1,504 households, all of those households are going to be, you get to a grocery store or a restaurant, absent walking on the pedestrian path to the commercial, are going to have to make a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn on 904.
That's gonna
We
be-
don't have egress.
That's going to be addressed in the traffic study with NC DOT, and that road is not theirs and not part of this preliminary plat. So
Yeah,
you can bring it up
I
with the
would just-
town anytime you like, but it's not part of this review. So
I would be interested if there has been any discussion or has there been any progress on that we could look forward to.
I guess we can put that on as a question under item 7 here today. Because that's just general administrative information, not for this review that I can see.
I think you're asking the town as opposed to asking us.
Yeah.
Is that
Oh, yeah,
correct?
that's correct.
So I guess
Kind of, I'm moving it down in the list.
the answer to that question is, from far as you're concerned, the answer is no. From the town,
to be,
we can discuss that in
We can discuss
administrative
that as
review.
part of item 7. If there's any, there may be no information. I don't know.
Yeah, because you have, I mean, there is a stub out
Oh, yes.
that hopefully one day Angel Trace returns, will offer an opportunity to relieve some of the traffic flow on 904.
We want what you want. We've designed for it
Yeah.
to the extent it's within our control. So, yeah.
All right,
Okay, any other questions, Jerry?
I think I'm good.
Jerry's
I
good?
yielded my time to Stuart, so that's good.
Well, I'm giving you time back, should you need it.
Oh, Stuart.
Everybody else, I think, so, staff, town, any other questions, or, I guess my only thing is how we make sure we incorporate, this is where I always get in trouble, I'm gonna get in trouble, I think, these comments and sort of, I won't call them side agreements or intentions, good intentions, into this next part, whether we vote to approve or not. Having that, is it going to be part of the minutes? Is there going to be like a list that's shared with the board and the applicant? Like, here's our things discussed, here's best intentions. And so that 3 years from now, when inspectors are running around looking at things, they kind of know that. Is some things they said they're going to change in the plans. Now, the question I'm going to ask is there a time fence on them to make their changes and send them back to the town? Or nothing's going to happen to this packet until final plat.
Right. Well, what I can can I note what I believe you committed to make changes to?
Please.
First thing I have is updating the plan to show the multi-use path terminology, correct that, and then provide some type of cross-section detail for it
Yes.
to compliant with the town's code. I heard dashing in the emergency road connection on page CS 3 and 4.
Yes.
I heard clarifying tree mitigation note to be consistent with the CZ condition. That was
Yeah.
a tree mitigation page, whatever it was for tree mitigation.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
tree save.
Yes, page L,
credits.
yes. And then the roadway angle, I wrote down roadway 21 and 22, I believe it was. from 53 degrees to show that it is
60.
actually compliant and above 60 degrees.
Yes.
Those are 4 things that I heard committed to show compliance with the code.
Yes, sir. And to answer your question, Mr. Chairman, I think where we are is, because your fundamental question is, does this plan comply? And I think that you can approve it subject to the applicant making those 4 changes that Mr. Satterfield just described.
It's not
And we
conditioned.
would rely on staff to make sure that the final plat adheres to those 4 conditions.
Yeah, and what it requires the chairman's signature anyway. So what I can do is when I get those plans, you're going to approve. You're going to approved sooner than later. So when your engineer provides me those plan sets and I review them, I'm just throwing this out to the planning board. I can review them for compliance. I can let the chair know, and then he can look over my shoulder before he signs it.
But to clarify, Mr. Dysoner, this is not final plat after
Right.
the roads are built. This is an update preliminary plat that's submitted in short order.
So
Okay,
address
so
this.
So what would
Corrections.
we intend as a short order, within 30 days, or?
I mean, I'd hope to have all the changes done here this week and delivered early next week
So
to your offices.
within 2 weeks. is-
So
Absolutely.
yeah.
So do we've, part of the agenda discussed scheduling a meeting
We probably don't
next-
need it, but we'll.
Well,
yeah.
next week?
That was kind of holding it on, and if
We
needed,
just hold that as a placeholder in case.
if it felt like the changes were needed to have additional conversation. I believe what we landed on with these 4 things were very, I don't want to say ministerial, but they were pretty basic, very easily changed on the plan. Easier for me to say than do. I understand, but
Well, they're objective.
Okay, so
better word, much better word.
So this would be an amendment to the preliminary plat. So the preliminary plat reflects the 4 things that you
Correct.
discussed. So that preliminary plat you would review, and based upon the approval of staff
And
and
his,
Ron,
and his signature.
we could then proceed to a final plat,
They would proceed.
and that final plat would be approved by staff.
Correct. Yeah, and in between that, and it's not necessarily what you asked, they still have to do construction documents, such as all the utility plans, the stormwater review, et cetera. And they will provide us documentation typically and say, we've gotten approvals for those. Well, here's our state stormwater approval as an example.
Right.
Then authorize them to move forward with construction.
And that's something that would happen between the declarant and staff.
Right, right.
So do we need a motion to
No,
approve that as a
there's
process?
No.
Yeah, that is the
that
process.
is the
I think a
process.
motion would be more
The
in order
motion
of
is going to be to
these-
approve this preliminary plan with the 4
Conditions.
intentions. I don't want to call them
Corrections.
corrections. That's
Yeah,
okay.
corrections.
The 4 corrections that are stipulated to be incorporated in the. So I guess I'll go ahead and make the motion. Any other discussion
Well,
first?
it would, and then the final approval would be incumbent on staff and Ron LeBrun.
the final
final
approval of
approval.
the
No, no,
preliminary plat.
Final approval of the
Yes.
preliminary
Preliminary
plat
plat
would be
is-
incumbent upon Ron LeBruno and staff.
Correct.
Okay? Does that sound like a good motion?
So I'll go ahead and make the motion. Someone. So any other things from the? I know you're like saying no, but certainly you're free to make any other comment or helpful.
Thank you.
And before we make this motion, can I just share one thing? I think this has been a somewhat contentious process, which is healthy. And this is definitely an improvement on what this planning board approved back in November of 2022. And I've lived here, had property here since '91. There's a long and somewhat less than good story in terms of some of the issues that were raised with the previous owner of this plat, and we look forward to Logan delivering what they've placed here. I know I've had some reservations about it, but I think this is going to be ultimately an improvement on what Sunset Beach has to offer to its
Jerry, you
household
have one
owners.
thing?
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
have to commend them for demonstrating their willingness to work with it. Like, there's always some trepidation when you get into business with somebody you hardly know, but I think you guys have done a great job of this.
Thank you. It's been a mutually effective process, and we're grateful for it.
Yes. So I will enter a motion to approve the Angel Trace Phase 1B, 2, and 3 preliminary plat as submitted with 4 additional corrections to be documented within a period of 2 weeks.
I go so moved.
Anybody second?
That will be submitted and approved by staff
And
Ron
chairman.
LaBruno.
Right.
And based on that approval, the preliminary plat can proceed to final.
Correct. Any seconds?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No ayes, the ayes have it. Good
May I
luck.
speak briefly, Mr. Chairman?
You're allowed to speak as long as you want, but you're
Thank you.
charging them, not me.
No,
As
So-
opposed to,
Billable out.
your time is valuable. We respect it, and I apologize for us missing the mark.
No,
on
we-
the time that the meeting started. We uniformly thought that it was at 10, but that consistent misunderstanding didn't make us any less
know,
late, and so I
You
apologize.
didn't have to bring it up. No one would.
No,
know.
we expected road hazards out there this morning
Yeah.
from you guys.
yeah, you
so-
should have stuck with road hazards.
No, I'm not transparent.
But believe me,
Yeah.
we could talk and fill time until you got here. It's not, as you can see, that's probably not a problem for us.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Good luck to you.
All right, take care.
Thank you, gentlemen, everybody. Thanks, everybody. Oh, wait a minute. No, we're not done yet. Okay, you guys can go. Give you a second to leave.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good luck.
Good luck.
That concludes the new business. So the next is just just administrative. Well, wait. Item 3 on new biz was a possible recess. So we don't need it. We voted.
You
it's
do
done.
not need the recess, but you do need to cancel the October agenda, meeting.
I need to do what?
You
Cancel
need
the
to cancel
October.
the October meeting.
Right. So we do not need. We're not recessing today. We'll eventually get to number 9 adjournment. So that's required. But because of I'm not here in October, and I believe
I'm not here either.
so, we will not have a quorum. So the October meeting will be canceled. Our next meeting is in November. Is that okay? Everybody else is good.
Is there anything on the?
Anything on the
Agenda?
agenda, Ron? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So
Nothing other than those amendments that we can talk at a later date. So.
right.
Right.
So no recess, no interim meeting, no October meeting. Next meeting will be regular meeting in November, and obviously as we did before, we can go over the agenda the week or so before, as moving closer. Number 7 on our administrative comments. The only thing I've heard, there are 2 things. Any status update on our 5th ETJ member?
The status update on the ETJ representative is that we are in the process of building a database of all the COs that have been issued in the ETJ in the last year or so, in addition to all the existing ETJ property owners, to send out a mass mailing to try to get some participation from the ETJ to represent that area on this board.
Right. So we collect the name, then we send it to the county, and then they
Mhm.
do exactly what best.
Should we start, I mean, that's a great next step. Absent a satisfactory outcome, should we start exploring changes to,
It's required, I believe.
I mean, where is that? Is that ordinance at
ETJ
the
is a
county
requirement
level?
of state law.
State law, state
State-
standards,
oh,
state requirements.
okay.
You have an
Never mind.
ETJ, you have to have representation.
Mhm.
All right, thanks.
Okay, and the second one, which I'm sure is a touchy one, was just any possible update on Angel Trace Road that's allowed to be public.
There's no update.
Any other administrative issues? I think that's it. We don't, is anybody up this year?
No, thanks. Richard and I are up.
I think in February, right?
next year.
Hold on, I used to have the list here. Yeah, February 2025, Richard and Jerry. And I guess the other small thing we got, again, just to make sure everybody folks understand, this pile of documents you just got is Appendix B1 in your book. Okay. Whether at some point, I'm sure you'll add it to the electronic one that's published.
Mhm.
Because right now it looks like adoption and the outdoor lighting has been added. So there's like 2 more to be added, right? What do we have? We had the open space thing and the something else, right?
Diversity of trees.
The tree. So we have those 2 to be added, and then this B1 will be added. And I asked Lisa to send around the old UDO again, and you're probably wondering why the hell I got this old thing for, was because the Riptide Sea Trail CZ will be an appendix to that one, even though it's no longer the current one, because that was a CZ that went into effect under the old UDO. So I inadvertently, stupidly erased my old one and gave the book to Chad, and he replaced it with the new one. So I asked Lisa to send around at least an electronic version to save in your computer. So if Riptide comes back with a preliminary plat for additional work in Sea Trail, we can't look at this book.
Right.
We have to look at the old one.
I thought they agreed that they'd be
No.
bound by the new UDO.
No.
Mm-mm.
No,
They
no.
thought they agreed to that for tree abatement.
Yes, that's part of it. That's a condition. We grabbed the condition an article we were working on and made it a condition in there because we wanted it. And there might have been a couple of things, so that's why I had Lisa send that out. So don't erase that. Save
Okay.
that. And she probably does have some hard copies of some old ones around if we need to look at some paper. But that's why I had her distribute that, is that when she distributes the CZ ordinance for Sea Trail, hopefully before the next preliminary plat, that really becomes an appendix in that book. It's going
Is
to
there, I mean, we have virtual copies of the previous UDO?
be. She just sent that around again because I got rid of mine inadvertently.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, so
so
send
Stuart
that
probably
around
never
again.
had one.
No.
So you have electronic. If you
I
would
just
like
sent
paper,
you
let
the
me know.
one on it yesterday was the old UDO, right, in your email.
Mhm.
You attach, so that one you need to save on your home computer or pad or whatever you use.
Okay. I'll take a look. I may have already dumped it, but I'll take a
Right.
look.
So that's why
Well, you got
I
it
had her do
again yesterday.
You just got it yesterday
So,
night, 4:00.
The old one.
There was
Oh,
an
okay.
email that went
I'll
out.
take a look.
Right.
All right.
And
thanks.
that's why I asked her to do that, is because I dumped mine and then thought, not a smart idea. I'm going to have to look at that thing occasionally, which is going to cause a lot of confusion
It is.
whenever they come with preliminary. And I'm assuming that they're gearing up to do that shortly at some point. We only had the one so far, 15B
Mm-hmm.
or something we looked at.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming they're going to come with more. And we're going to have to keep referring to the old book, the old UDO, because that's what applies, except for things that were conditioned in their document.
In the conditional rezone. Okay.
Okay. Now, and next will be any other public comments, and we bored our public and we left. So no public comments.
We sent her home early. That'll show her.
Anything else from staff? No. We're a little bit past time I would have liked. So barring anything else, anyone like to make a motion for adjournment?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No nays? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody,
Thanks,
for the
everybody.
extra time and everything.